Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto saves Rias from Rias part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Issei Hayate was speechless at the flag event happening in front of him. This pretty girl had walked up to him out of nowhere, called for him by name, and she even asked him, "I'm sorry, what did you say?" "GG's, why are you making me say it again?" The beautiful young girl with long black hair whined as she tried to work up her courage again with a burning red face. "I've seen Hayate-kun walk around this way for a while now, and then every time I saw you I got nervous. My knees got weak and then my heart started to race. And I've wanted to say this to you for some time now." She took a deep breath. "Hayate-kun, will you go out with me?" Issei looked at the girl called Yuma Amano as time froze around him. Just earlier today he had dreamed of getting a girlfriend to grab her wonderful boobs. He had peeked on all the girls in the changing room so he could see their naked bodies. And he was beaten up because he was a vile and hated pervert. And yet somehow, this beautiful, lovely girl wanted to be his girlfriend. What could he say? What was he thinking? "Feel you up, K.E. "Yes. Of course I'll go out with you." "Ha ha 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 ha. Guess I need to thank you for." "Run. Get away from H. JJ just one last time." "You don't have to. I'm doing this for BZZT BZZT asterisk BZZT asterisk BZZ." A hand came down and smacked the alarm clock silent, leaving him in silence while the man pushed himself up. His messy, unruly blonde hair parted slightly to reveal a blue eye hidden behind the bangs. He looked up at the only window in the room and had to close his eyes to not be blinded by the sunlight. He looked between the crummy cover, stained futon, dirty room, bug-infested floors and pile of old clothes. He just sighed and rubbed the back of his head. "Guess I'll go today. Nothing better to do." There she is. "Himejima Onisama. You look so lovely today. Do you want us to carry your bags for you, Onisama?" "We love you, Akino Onisama." Era. It's good to see you all today." The beautiful smiling, ponytailed senior woman responded cheerfully to all of her loving crowd. The boys and girls of Ko always did this sort of ritual when they saw her walk through the halls. It's the kind of expectation you have when one of the two great Onisamas walk through the school. Akino Himejima was about the average height of the girls her age. She had deep black hair, done up into a long ponytail that almost reached down to her feet. She had a marvelously curvaceous figure, perfect mile-long legs, wide hips and a thin waist that lead up to the largest pair of breasts in the school. For some girls, they admired her just because she was still able to stand up straight with those things on her chest. She walked with an amazing grace and poise that not many would find in this day and age. Her hair and ponytail was so elegant that many of her fans called it the last great ponytail of the 21st century. And when the masses looked to her, she held her hand to her mouth and gave a stunning smile with era. She was the dream girl for many members of the school, and an ideal older sister for others. She walked into her homeroom and acknowledged everyone who greeted her so intently. She walked to the back of the room and sat in her chair. She started to organize her desk when she noticed another form walk into her space. "You appear to be as popular as ever, Akino-san." The busted girl looked up from her desk to see her fellow classmate standing by her side. The girl was a slim beauty with short black hair and captivating purple eyes hidden behind her red glasses. She had her arm under her modest chest and was fixing her glasses. "It's Sana Kaishu." "Kaicho. We love you." Era, looks like you're still quite the popular girl yourself, Kaicho," Akino said with a laugh as she covered her mouth and smiled. If everyone was looking at them at the moment, then it was best they kept up the appearance that they were only familiar with each other. "What can I do for you today, Kaicho?" "I just wanted to inquire how Rias was doing." Sauna leaned against the desk to relax herself. "I heard that the reception date has already been set for sometime next month. How did she take that?" Akino's face actually stiffened for a moment at the mention of a certain reception that has been set in her personal future. She closed her eyes before she regained her perfect composure. Era, Kaicho, you should know better than to underestimate Bucho like that. She has far too many responsibilities to worry about than a silly date." Sauna noticed for a second the uncomfortable expression on the Himejima woman's face before she ignored it and smiled. "I suppose you're right. Rias was always more of a in-and-out kind of girl." She wanted to continue her talk but was interrupted by the commotion around them. "Hey! Did you guys hear?" "What?" Apparently that guy came to school today. What? Seriously? Why does he even bother? Nobody wants him here anyway. Heh, he probably thinks nobody will keep calling him loser if he tries and prove himself at school. Too late for that. He's a failure at everything he does anyway. Sauna and Aquino listened in as their classmates talked about one of the third years in their school. Someone who transferred in last year into their second term. And someone who never came to school, never came to his classes, didn't go to any clubs or have any friends. He was just as bad as the so-called pervert trio of the second years. The loser of Ko Academy. Everyone in the hallway was looking at the woman as she walked down the hall with her mind on other subjects. She had a voluptuous body with perfect hourglass figure and a large bust that caught the eye of most hormonal teenagers. Her turquoise eyes were like magnificent gems that captured the soul of many feeble hearts. But above everything else, her beautiful, flowing crimson hair covered her back like a curtain of silk. Rias Gremery. The most beautiful girl in Ko Academy. The most popular idol in the school. And the other half of the two great Wenisamas. The stunning foreigner in charge of the occult research club that spoke so fluently that you almost couldn't believe she hadn't spent her whole life in Japan. Despite most of the students in the hallway putting their full attention on the crimson-haired girl, she paid no mind to their stares. She was preoccupied with thinking about all the strange events and signs she was receiving over the last few weeks. Magical readings of possible holy elements in the town vicinity were putting her on edge. Not to mention that Oniai-sama and Oto-sama had set a date to her to meet a certain vain immortal devil. She sighed and shook her head. She was not in the mood for a whole school day of work. Except with her eyes covered and her unfocused senses, she didn't see a taller, larger figure come around the corner. They walked into each other, and the crimson beauty fell back on her butt. The moment she fell over, the entire hallway went silent in shock and anger. Rias moaned a little and rubbed her back, sorry. A larger, calloused hand lowered down to help her up. Rias looked past the hand and up at the man it belonged to. He was taller than her, at least by several inches. He was wearing the Ko Academy uniform with a light orange shirt underneath the black jacket. His clothes were wrinkly and disheveled, probably from not being properly attended to by the blonde man. And his shaggy blonde hair had pushed his bangs over his eyes to keep them out of sight from the redhead, but left the strange marks on his face free for her to see. After a moment of silence to look over the blonde man, she realized she was still on the floor. She reached out to take his hand. Get out of here, you bastard. Some of Rias' fans kicked the blonde away and guarded their idol from his advances. Don't you dare touch Gremery Onisama with your filthy hands. Were you trying to steal something from her? Don't try to get Rias Onisama dirty, you Yankee. Rias was surrounded by both young boys and girls from the school that thought they needed to protect her from the supposed delinquent. She heard rumors about Naruto Uzumaki, a classmate in her year that came from overseas with bleached hair and a rough accent. She heard that he had ties to the underbelly of society, rarely ever came to school and always looked like he was ready to steal and become a charity case. Which was why most of the school tried to stay away from him. As Naruto was pushed away by the large barrier of students, his eyes briefly met with Rias. Just for an instant, just long enough for only Rias to fully see them. And everyone was wrong. His eyes didn't convey any form of deceit. They didn't show any anger or fear, no sadness or trickery. They were empty. He wasn't trying to keep up appearances or look good in front of other people. He simply didn't care who said what about him. He was just there. Rias watched him walk away, ignoring the sounds of the other students telling him to leave the third-year beauty alone. And she watched him walk away. Without even getting to say sorry to him. What the fuck do you mean you've got a girlfriend? One bald boy and one bespectacled boy screamed out in absolute dread as their stone-faced expression were aimed towards their mutual best friend. Issei currently had the biggest, most smug shit-eating grin on his face as he could muster. He rubbed his chin and chuckled haughtily, "Ahahaha, come now Motohama-kun, Matsuda-kun, don't be so crass. We are in the presence of a young lady right now, you two must control your language." He did an over-the-top turn and bowed respectfully to the young Bishujo beside him. "I'm sorry about that, Yuma-chan, they usually aren't so rude." His new girlfriend shined a pretty smile at her new boyfriend. "It's okay, Haida-kun, I'm just happy that you want your friends to meet me already." She turned to the other two perverts and bowed to them. "It's a pleasure to meet you too. I hope we can get along very well in the future." Issei bid Yuma goodbye as she had to get going back to her own school. After she was out of sight, Issei turned back to his two friends that were still pale and frozen. He walked between them and made an even bigger smile. "Life is good, boys. Life is good." Rias was sitting in her dimly lit clubroom, at her desk with her hand playing with a red chess piece. She was looking over some reports and papers that needed her immediate attention. A hot cup of fresh tea was placed by her hand. Here you go, Bucho. Her dearest friend stood by her side after making one of her delicious cups of soothing tea for her leader. Thank you, Aquino. Aquino just smiled and politely bowed his head as Rias took a sip from her cup. The black-haired girl looked around the empty room. It's quite calm when we don't have any activities for the club to do, don't you think? Yes, well, there isn't any work for us to do until tonight. And Kaneko and Yuto still have class work to worry about, so we can't expect this room to always be so lively. Rias noted with a sly smile, rolling the pawn piece in her hand. Aquino saw what Rias was doing with the red piece. Bucho, why do you have another spare piece? Rias finally took note of what she was playing with and looked down at her hand. Oh, this? It's supposed to be a little wedding gift Oni-sama gave to me before we started setting the work for the wedding. I've had it for a while now and I have nothing to use it for. She placed it on the table and spun it under her finger. Oh, a wedding gift? Aquino tried to sound excited but saw that Rias had a comically miffed pout on the sore subject matter. Well, that was very nice of Surzek-sama. Rias just raised one eyebrow patronizingly. Right, nice. Oni-sama. Stop. I want you to face me now, Rias demanded from her older brother as they walked through the west wing of the castle. The taller, caped figure stopped his walk and turned to his younger sister. Ah, Rias, I didn't notice you were following me. I've been yelling at you for 5 minutes. What can I do for you today? Rias stopped and took a calming breath before she started her tirade against her brother. I wanted to get a straight answer from you as to why I have to marry into the Phoenix family. Why is there a need for me to be engaged to Riser Phoenix, of all people? Her older brother just smiled and motioned with his hands for her to calm down. Ma, don't worry. It's just one of those political or celebrity weddings, you know, just for show. Rias wasn't satisfied with that answer as a tick mark grew on her head. I understand that we need to keep up appearances with the showing of a pure-blooded wedding. What I don't understand is why I need to give up my future to such a megalomaniacal, egotistical braggart like him. Surzek didn't know what to say with all those increasingly harsh words used to appropriately explain the Phoenix Sun. What about the Gremory family? Didn't we already go through all the worry with father about me being appointed as the next heir? You don't have to worry about things like that, Rias. If it really comes down to it, Milikas will have to take up the throne when he comes of age. Surzek turned back around and started heading back to his quarters. Besides, this is all just a formality that we should be able to figure out soon enough. Oni-sama. Catch. Rias caught the item her brother threw over his shoulder and looked down at it. A white pawn piece that started to glow red in her hands. One of their evil pieces. What is this? An extra pawn piece Ajuka gave to me to hand over to someone I believe deserved it. Just think of it kind of like a gift from the Satans as a thank you for going along with this. He turned back to his sister and clapped his hands together in a begging form. I'm sorry, Rias, I really have to go now. Wait. Oni-sama. I don't need another piece for. Don't think of it like I'm pitying you like that, Rias. Surzek just gave his dear little sister a calming smile. I think that no matter what happens, I'll always believe you will know the right thing to do. And I'm putting my faith in that you'll take in a wonderful family. Rias stayed quiet after her brother had said that and just looked down at the chess piece and thought. Surzek's run back was stopped when he skidded across the floor and turned around on one foot. Oh. Almost forgot, Sarah Falls sends her regards as well. She wanted me to tell you, cha. Congrats, Rias-chan. If that mean it does anything to hurt you, tell me and I kick his butt to Mars asterisk. Surzek finished the message with Sarah Falls' signature pose and his tongue peeking out of his lips. Rias just had a blank, flat look on her face and shook her head disappointedly. I'm leaving now. She left the hall, leaving Surzek standing there in that awkward pose, looking like an idiot. A young boy saw his father frozen in place like that and walked over to him. Ota-sama? What are you doing? Failing, son. I'm failing. Rias looked at the pawn piece and flicked it over with her finger with a confident smile. Well, it doesn't matter what happens in the future. Let's just worry about what we've got to do today. She stood back up and started to undress herself. I'm gonna take a quick shower, then we can send out our familiars. Aquino just smiled sweetly as Rias stripped down to her nethers. Afufu, do you want me to set out a clean set of clothes for you? Thank you. Rias threw away her underwear and started dashing to the shower. Aquino just couldn't help but giggle at her best friend's excitable behavior. Even with her respectable, well-mannered behavior, she couldn't help but act like a kid when she was excited for something again. Then again, They were both kind of like that sometimes. Today was the best day of Issei's entire brief, ladyless life. In just one date with his new girlfriend, he had effectively ended a 17-year relationship with his right hand. And despite the good times, it would not be one he missed. Yuma-chan was, in no uncertain terms, the perfect girl for him. She was as beautiful as a goddess, yet didn't let her looks become a vanity. She was kind and sweet, listening to what he said and letting him listen when she had something to say as well. Her smile was like a ray of bright light that shined down on all his dark tendencies and made him feel safe. Her clothes were simple but suited her sweet exterior she showed on their date, a little scrunchie on her wrist that Issei gave to her as a gift. She was perfect. The two teenagers were now at the fountain in the local park, the final stop for their first date. Yuma turned on her feet and looked to her new boyfriend with a bright red flush across her face. Issei-kun. The spiky, brown-haired boy perked up when she said his name. Yes, Yuma-chan? She poked her fingers together and looked away in embarrassment. Listen, we've finally been on a date, and I really enjoyed it, so I was wondering if you could do a little favor for me? Issei did his best to contain his excitement but couldn't help but smile. What is it? I'll do whatever I have to help you. Yuma put her hands together, tilted her head and smiled as happily as she could. Will you die for me? Issei cleaned his ears out with his pinky, must have gotten too excited and heard her wrong. Excuse me? I think I heard you wrong. I said two massive black crow wings, dark as the night that surrounded them, unfolded from her back. Will you die for me? The wings on her back flapped, and she was raised off the ground, the smile on her face turning cold and meaningless as her face seemed to change from the soft, every girl expression to a leaner form. Why, Yuma-chan? Issei instinctively stepped back from the winged girl as a shining weapon formed in her hand out of nowhere. She smiled and held the weapon over her shoulder. But bye. She threw the spear of light as hard as she could as it rocketed towards the unsuspecting boy. He froze in horror as it soared towards his chest and planned to pierce him. Until a figure jumped from the street and tackled Issei to the ground, evading the spear of light by a tiny margin. Yuma raised an eyebrow in displeasure and looked to where her target had been thrown to. Issei was sprawled out on the ground, dizzy from the sudden whiplash, while the taller, blonde figure standing beside him was rubbing the stiff out of his neck. The whiskered man with the white cloth on his shoulder groaned, "Shit. Haven't moved like that in a while. Probably not a good idea to dodge attacks like that without stretching out first." Yuma narrowed her eyes and slowly floated back down to the ground. She stood still and glared at the blonde in front of her that finally looked in her direction. And who exactly are you supposed to be? Before Naruto could even open his mouth, Issei jumped up to his feet and pointed at Naruto in confusion. Hey! You're that delinquent from my school, aren't you? Naruto looked back to Issei with a bored expression and raised one visible eyebrow. Do you know me? You're Naruto Uzumaki-senpai from Ko Academy, right? The delinquent everybody tries to stay away from? The Yankee guy who barely ever comes to school? Issei yelled out as he was completely befuddled from the situation around him. Naruto just blinked. Yeah, I'm Naruto Uzumaki. And am I supposed to know who you are? Issei just blinked confusingly. Huh? He pointed at himself. I am the pervert Issei. The lump of libido? The pure incarnation of lust? You know, one of the perverted trio? Never heard of you. The guys who always have depraved thoughts in their heads. We always cut holes in the walls of the girls' changing rooms and spy at the girls as they change their clothes. The ones who would trade their souls at the drop of a hat for the chance to grope some soft épée. I can't tell if you're saying that in shame or pride? Naruto deadpanned as Issei tried to explain his gimmick. I'm your underclassman. Whoa, that can fucking wait. What the hell are you even doing here? Naruto grabbed the white apron on his shoulder and opened it up, revealing a cartoon drawing of a bowl of ramen with hands and little black eyes. I just came back from my shift, and I was heading home. He turned around and looked to the girl with the massive wingspan, and on my way, I see some girl about to make some brat into a shish kebab. I'm 1 year younger than you. Yuma glared at the two men, not sensing any power or special aura coming from either of them. Yet she was distracted with thinking how the blonde was able to jump out of the way of her attack and still take Issei with him. You shouldn't have interfered, boy. This was just a private matter I have with Issei-kun. But since you've interfered, I guess you'll just have to be a part of it now. Naruto's eyes furrowed as Issei looked at her in worry and tried to reason with her. Why, Yuma-chan, what's going on? Why are you doing this? Yuma looked at the second-year student and smiled at him. Oh, Issei-kun, there is no Yuma-chan. That's just a lie I told you to get close to you. She laughed into her hand. Did you really think any girl would want to go out on a date with you, a dirty little weasel? How silly of you. Issei's face fell into hopelessness as his heart became heavy. Naruto nudged him back. I don't know what the hell's going on here, but I don't think we should stick around to find out. Issei tried to empathize with the girl. There has to be something wrong with her. She wouldn't say things like that. What about the bird wings on her back, kid? I don't think this is a situation where we try to. Naruto stopped speaking when he saw Yuma's smiling face directly behind Issei's dreaded expression. He panicked and tried to make space before he felt an unbelievably hot sensation burn his chest and heart. A spear of pure light had been shoved through Issei's back and pierced through Naruto's chest, leaving them both frozen in disbelief as the burning pain settled in their centers. The light weapon evaporated and two huge, gaping bloody holes were made through their bodies. Issei fell backwards, landing on the gravel and making a huge splash of crimson blood around him. Naruto fell to his knees, grasping the empty hole in his chest and vomiting massive globs of blood, coating his legs and the ground with his vital life. His vision blurred and he reached out to the smiling woman, trying to grab her even though she was at least a foot away from reach. His motor skills failed and Naruto fell sideways into a huge pool of crimson. Both of them were bleeding out, Issei and Naruto in shock as the agonizing pain faded and their whole bodies went numb and cold. Issei raised his blood-soaked hand as it trembled in front of his face, drops of his blood falling all over his face. Past the hand, he could see that Yuma walked over and stood over the bleeding-out boy with a sickeningly sweet smile still on her face. Sorry, Issei-kun, but I had to do this. Don't blame me, blame the one that gave you such a dangerous skill. She looks back up and pouted at the blonde who was heavily panting as his eyes shook in his head. But you can blame yourself for trying to play the hero part when you had no chance. Naruto just raised a shaky hand at her before coughing up more blood and falling back on the pebbles beneath him. She looked back down to Issei, knelt down by his frightened head and smiled. It was fun. Thanks for taking me out on that date, Issei-kun. She kissed her fingers and tapped his tear-covered cheeks as he tried to wheeze out a plea. She started to float again and waved at her dying ex-boyfriend, bye. She disappeared from sight, leaving the two men to bleed out as the light faded from their eyes. Naruto couldn't help but curse what had happened. He said he didn't want to be a part of anything like this again, but the moment it arrives, he has to try and help people. But now he was dying, and this time there was no help from anyone else to make sure he makes it out of this alive. Issei was silently crying, feeling the contrast of his body going cold as he was bathing in the warmth of his own blood. He didn't want this to happen. He didn't want to die yet. He was still a virgin, damn it. There had to be some rule against this kind of shit. As the two men started to fade out, a bright red light started to shine from a blood-covered paper beside Issei's pants. A massive circle with dozens of symbols inside of it was projected from the soaked piece of parchment, and the men were bathed in a warm red glow. A female figure formed above the red circle, and she looked down at the dying men below her. I guess you were the one who called me. And it looks like I came just in time to clean up the mess. She looked down at the brown-haired boy as the light finally disappeared from his eyes and his head went slack. She looked up a little towards the blonde whose face was covered in his own blood yet still found enough strength left to look into her eyes. They stared for a moment before his eyes went hazy and slowly closed shut. They were dead. Both of them. Finally gone from this world. She just closed her eyes and smiled. Well, it looks like I've found two little strays on their way home. Well, don't worry boys, I'll see you soon. Two large, crooked black wings sprouted out of her lower back and her hands started to glow the same kind of red as her hair. When Naruto slowly opened his eyes again, there was a bright white light and in blank space set out before him. Well, this was probably what was left for those that finally crossed the other side. It wasn't a burning pit of fire and there weren't any monsters or demons mutilating him. This probably wasn't hell. But there weren't any clouds and he was being greeted with a 1,000,000-mile-long all-you-can-eat ramen extravaganza. This wasn't nirvana. After a moment the fatigue finally started to fade from his eyes and everything became clear. He was staring up at a fluorescent light and a beige tile ceiling. Naruto just blinked slowly. Well, that's disappointing. He pushed himself up and saw that he was on one of those white beds in what looked like an infirmary. He was alone in the room because all that he could see was a spare set of clothes set out on the table beside him. He slowly lowered his hand to where he thought he had been stabbed, feeling his normal chest and his heart beat steadily. He rubbed his face and sighed. Was all that just a dream? He put his hand back on the bed and was greeted with a soft sensation and a warm feeling covering his hand. Naruto slowly turned his head to look down at the girl that had softly moaned when his hand touched her breast while she was quietly napping. Her soft face was taking in light breaths while her long red hair covered her body like a blanket. And she might have been naked. Naruto lifted up the bed sheet they seemed to have been sharing. Yep, she was naked. And so was he. Naruto didn't know if this was a dream, real life or the afterlife, but this had never happened before. So Naruto pulled himself out of the bed and started to dress himself in the new clothes that had been set out at the side. He grabbed the black boxers and blue jeans to cover his bare privates. Your other pair was soaked in blood and had a hole through it, so I had to get you a new outfit. I hope you don't mind. Naruto pulled the unbuttoned shirt over his toned frame and looked over his shoulder to the girl in the bed that had finally woken up. Naruto started to button up the new shirt. It's fine. These look like better clothes anyway. He stayed silent for a moment before asking a question that was on his mind for the last few moments. Did we do anything? Rias smiled and giggled, shaking her head negatively. No. We didn't do anything like that. She sat up, exposing her large breasts for him to see if he just took a second look back. Why? Are you disappointed? Relieved, actually. If I did actually do something like that, I would at least like to remember what it was like. Naruto finished buttoning the shirt and straightened it out. What happened exactly? I was summoned after you and the other boy had been stabbed by that woman. He nodded his head. What happened to that kid? I healed his wound and dropped him off in his room back at his house. Rias stretched out her stiff body before pulling the sheet up to cover his naked chest, out of courtesy for the man that looked like he was waiting for her to cover up before facing her. I couldn't find your address in the school registry, so I just brought you to the infirmary in the academy. Naruto just nodded his head and stood up. And you're naked, why exactly? Rias just looked down at her current clothing situation. Because I can heal other people better when I have closer contact to their bodies. After I healed Hyuga-kun's injuries, I came back over here to heal yours. And after I was done, I was so tired that I had to take a quick nap. It's a little fault of mine, but I find it more comfortable to sleep naked than to wear anything else when you sleep. Naruto stopped getting dressed, fully clothed in a new set of jeans and a white polo shirt. He turned towards the bed and leaned against the wall of the infirmary. He stared at the redhead. Rias Gremory-san, right? Yes, Naruto Uzumaki-san. Do you mind if I call you Naruto? Naruto just shrugged his shoulders indifferently. That didn't matter right now. Who exactly are you? I'm Rias Gremory. She threw her legs off the side of the bed and crossed them comfortably. Two large, black bat wings unfolding from her back, and I'm a devil. Naruto's eyes actually widened before he smiled in a condescending manner. Devil? Really? I've seen a lot of stuff before, but I draw the line at devil. You're a devil now too. The disbelief in Naruto's eyes suddenly faded when he realized she really wasn't joking. What do you mean? I couldn't bring you back to life as a human, so I brought you back as a devil. You should be lucky I had a spare piece to give you after I brought back Hyuga-kun. He took almost every other one I had. Rias informed the blonde, silently thanking her stupid Oni-sama for giving her that little gift. She pointed at his chest. As of now, you're a servant to the House of Gremory. Naruto placed his hand against his chest, looking down at it and thought. Can you take it back? Rias shook her head. I'm sorry. Even if I could, if I tried to do that, then you would most likely die again. Servitude or death? Well, that just sucks. Naruto huffed as he looked up at the lights over his head, spreading the hair out of his eyes. Rias tilted her head. I promise it won't be as bad as you think. If you give it a chance, I'm sure you would find something to keep you here. Naruto closed his eyes. I'm sorry, Gremory-san, but it's because I'm here that I won't have anything to care about again. Naruto walked over to the door and opened it up. I won't abandon you. Me and my group won't leave you alone at school. Then I guess I don't need to go to school anymore. Whatever, I'm pretty sure I can learn what I need on the streets. He joked with a little smile as he prepared to walk out. Before he stopped and looked over at the redhead again, bowing his head slightly. Thank you. Rias watched as Naruto left the infirmary and made his way out of the school. She sighed and got out of bed, placing her feet on the cold ground and standing naked in the empty room. She walked over to her neatly piled clothes and pulled her underwear up her legs. I won't let you go so easily, Naruto, she said with a small smile and giggle. You're just too cute and interesting for my new pawn. She vowed to herself to bring Naruto to her side, whatever the methods. Naruto always knew he never really was much of a morning person. Sometimes he would have gotten up early for training, but if he had a choice between getting up or sleeping in, he would take sleeping in hands down. But now it seems like he wasn't interested in the idea of getting up during the morning or afternoon now either. Just standing in the light of the sun felt like he had 1-ton boulders hooked onto his arms, legs and eyelids. He was sluggish all the way to work, feeling like he was dragging his limbs around. And at work, Gramps said that he was acting more sluggish and scatterbrained than usual. And now, for some odd reason, he felt like he had more energy while walking down the street to his apartment. He felt like he could run a few marathons and not even get winded. And everything was so bright that he couldn't tell the difference between whether something was under the moonlight or in the shadows of the buildings around him. He thought about all the different explanations for these sudden bursts in energy. Perhaps he just didn't get enough sleep last night, and now that the sun was down he was feeling more awake. Or maybe someone slipped him something in his drink, and now he's going through the side effects. Yet all his mind could think about was that pretty crimson-haired woman he found himself in bed with last night. And that no matter how much he tried to ignore it, the words she said to him last night had left an impression. "You're a devil now too." Naruto sighed and tried to shake his head free of the bad thoughts. All he wanted to do right now was go home, lay on the crappy futon, and try to shut his eyes. Naruto passed a taller man in a black trench coat and fedora on the street. As the blond man walked further past him, the tall man lifted his hand and a blue light started to form. He spun on his feet and threw the spear of light at the back of the retreating boy. The man saw the burning hot light pierce through the cloth of his target, and there was no body. The man watched as the white apron he had pierced started to burn into nothing but ash. He looked up from that spot to see the whiskered blond man standing a meter away from the burning cloth after dodging his attack. Naruto looked down to see the spear of light evaporate into little particles, leaving a seared-through hole in the ground. He looked up at the strange man across from him. "That's my second one in 2 days. I need to pay for those, you know." "Well, don't worry about it," the older man said as a similar pair of large black feathery wings popped out of his back and stretched out to their fullest length. "You won't need to worry about anything after I'm done with you, little devil." Naruto stepped back a little when he saw the man reveal his true nature. He looked the man over. "So what are you supposed to be anyway? Are you supposed to be a devil hunting other devils?" The tall man raised an eyebrow at his condescending tone and shook his head. "Aw, that's cute. He doesn't even know the preschool basics." He shook his head negatively. "No, I'm not a filthy devil like you," he said in a tone that wasn't venomous but just like he was stating general knowledge. "I'm a fallen angel." Naruto raised an eyebrow at his title. "Okay, what exactly does that mean?" The large man just looked at him in confusion. And when he saw the completely serious look on the blonde's face, he realized that he really wasn't joking about this. "Oh. Okay. You really don't know. Wow, I must be dealing with a fresh out of the crib kind of brat here. No matter." 2 large spears formed in his hands and he raised them over his head. "I'll just have to finish this quicker than I thought." He threw the spears of light at the blonde and watched as he dove out of the way from its strike zone. Naruto landed on the ground and looked up to watch as the fallen angel created more and more of his spears. The fallen angel sent his spears of light soaring at the young blonde man as he sprinted through the streets. Naruto still wasn't certain about how much damage these things could do if they even just scratched his skin, but since he didn't want to end up like he did yesterday, he opted to keep as far away from them as he could. Naruto continued to evade the attacks before one of them impacted against the fire hydrant in front of him. He jumped back and guarded himself as the metal protection measure exploded and covered the area in a spray of steam and water. The large man smiled as he was certain that he had finally started to break the young man down. But in the large spray of water he saw a trash can being thrown at him with impeccable aim. He swiped upward and shattered the plastic container like it was nothing. But after he destroyed the can, all of the garbage contents inside of it scattered and pelted him in trash. He opened his eyes again, and they widened when he saw the drenched blonde appear in front of him. He furrowed his eyes intensely, and planted a solid fist into the older man's face. He stumbled back a bit, and felt a drop of blood escape from his gums. He licked up the minuscule bit of blood and swallowed it before it escaped his lips. He smiled at the young man that now stood a foot away from him, and looked down at the arm that punched him. He smiled at the blood dripping down it. "Well, it looks as if you didn't come out as unharmed as you would have liked to, huh?" Naruto looked down at the metal shrapnel that pierced his arms at different intervals. He kept the wound out of sight to try and ignore the settling pain in his limbs. He gave a cheeky grin and said in a playful tone, "Big talk from a guy with a banana peel on his head." The fallen angel's smile started to fade and he reached up for the peel on his fedora. He tossed it to the side and wiped his hand on his jacket with a laugh. He looked at the blonde. "Okay. You are more fun than I anticipated. I should let you know my name is Danasik." Naruto narrowed his eyes. "Okay. Does that mean you want to know my name too?" "That's not needed. See, I told you my name out of courtesy." He had a wicked grin grow on his face as spears of light formed in both hands and he gripped them tightly. "You should at least know the name of the last man you will ever see, don't you think?" Naruto snarled his teeth and lowered into a fighting stance. The fallen angel lifted his spear up to A column of black and red energy covered the back of the spear and reduced it to nothing. Donasek and Naruto stared at it in surprise before they looked up towards the sound of approaching footsteps. A ball of the mysterious power illuminated the darkness, and revealed to be in the palm of the oncoming person. "I'd like it if you refrained from attacking my new servant." The gorgeous young woman with the deep red hair appeared with a calm and collected smile on her lovely face. She dispersed the black power in her hand and placed it to rest on her hip. "I haven't even gotten the chance to break him in yet." Donasek looked the young woman over before sighing and letting his light weapon dissipate in his hand. He fixed his fedora, and here I thought he was just a little stray walking around at night. I never would have thought he was a part of the esteemed Gremory family. Rias smiled and tilted her head with a mischievous look. "He's new." Naruto narrowed his eyes and felt his brow twitch. She was giving them a cheeky smile, and he had metal lodged in his arms. How was that fair? Donasek smiled and tilted his hat towards the young woman. "Well, I would hate to cause any more of a stir than what's already happened. So I shall take my leave for the day." But he turned around and sent a malicious grin towards the blonde man standing away from him. "I'd suggest you keep your new toys on a short leash. Who knows what might happen to him if he was walking home alone at night? We wouldn't want any unfortunate events to occur, do we?" Naruto took the threat he offered and gave a lopsided grin. "I'll keep that in mind in case I have to look over my shoulder." Donasek placed his fedora back on, and he was shrouded in a blanket of feathers. He disappeared and black crow feathers floated down to the ground. Rias flicked her hair out of her face and walked over to the taller blonde. "I'm sorry about that. You left so quickly this morning that I forgot to tell you about others that might come after you. It would come in handy if you remember important stuff like that first." Naruto mumbled as he ran his hands through his hair to throw off the water droplets. "Yes, but it looks like you were able to hold firm even though a fallen angel stood in front of you." She finally walked up to him and tilted her head with a smile. "It must come with being the #1 delinquent of Ko Academy, huh?" She giggled a little when she saw him sigh tiredly at her joke. Until she saw the injuries and blood seeping through the sleeves of his wet shirt. She gripped his arms and tried to look at them. "Looks like you got a few scratches. We should take care of that before they get infected." Naruto lifted his arms out of her hands. "It's nothing. I'll—" "Nonsense!" Rias interrupted as she grabbed them roughly and used her destruction ability to degrade the metal shrapnel into nothing. Once the obscenities were gone, she deactivated the black energy and started using a low-level healing spell to help his arms. "What kind of master would I be if I just left you alone in pain?" Naruto stayed silent and just watched as she concentrated on his minor wounds. The light from her hands illuminated her face as he realized he was just staring at her. He looked off to the side. "Thanks again." She looked up at him. "Huh? For helping. I don't know what that guy's problem was, but if you hadn't jumped and things would have gotten messier than they already were." Rias just smiled and hummed in understanding. "Well, you'd be surprised how many times incidents like this happen if you don't take charge. I just had to make sure nothing happened to my 2 new pawns before I could officially bring you into our group." Naruto raised an eyebrow at her. "Have you been spying on me the whole day?" "No. But I have a sense on you, and the moment that fallen angel arrived I thought something bad was going to happen. So I came running." She concentrated on the healing wounds again. "Finding you was a bit harder than I thought, though. I couldn't summon you or appear at your side. Must be something wrong with your piece." "Fallen angel?" Naruto looked over to where the black-winged man once stood and felt an aversion to wanting to be anywhere near him again. "What exactly does that mean?" Rias stopped healing him for a moment and looked at him with a confident expression. "If you'd like, I can explain everything to you. All you have to do is come to school tomorrow and stay after classes to come to our club." The whiskered blonde looked rather displeased with that condition. "You can't be serious." "I am," she replied with a firm smile. "In fact, I'm going to go visit Hidekun's house after this to tell him the same thing. What do you think?" Naruto thought for a moment until he shook his head. "No, thank you. I want to know what's going on, but I'd rather not be sucked into this thing any more than I already am." "All right then," Rias reluctantly agreed with a solemn nod of her head. Before she looked up at him with a wry smile. "Then I think I'll just cash in all these favors you owe me for healing you these last 2 days." Naruto froze for a moment as his shaggy hair covered his eyes in a shadow. He mechanically turned his head towards the redhead. "Why, you can't be. Or maybe I'll just follow you every day after work and keep bothering you until you say yes." She smiled at him innocently. "How does that sound?" Naruto felt a tick grow in his face as he pulled his arms out of her grasp. She seemed unhappy with that response and glared lightly at him. "I wasn't done. This is enough. I can fix the rest of it by myself." Naruto gingerly rubbed his arms. "I'd rather not put myself further in your pocket than I already have." She pouted up at him before sighing and shaking her head. Rias put her hands on her hips. Naruto stayed silent for a minute before lowering his head in defeat. I'll think about it. Rias nodded her head and started walking away. I'll see you tomorrow then. My vice president and I will be busy with other matters, so I'll send someone to pick you up. She disappeared in a flash of red light and Naruto was left alone in the street. He looked at the wounds that were close to closing up before he pulled them away. He just kept looking at them like he was expecting something, but nothing changed. He let out a heavy breath and looked very tired. It used to be a whole lot easier. The entire room was quiet as all the students were nervous and jittery. Mostly because of the dark and heavy atmosphere revolving around the blonde delinquent that surprisingly came to class today. Although for the entire day he just had his face down in his desk and arms. Even the teachers gave up on trying to get him to pay attention during their classes. Hey, did Uzumaki seriously stay the whole day? 2 days. In a row. He actually came to class 2 days in a row. Has that ever happened before? Why is he doing it this time? And maybe it's an alibi? He's trying to establish somewhere everyone can see him so he can't be accused for a crime he committed? Seriously? Did these people sleep under tabloid articles or something? And all of these rumors started because of one woman and his shitty timing. Naruto was just glad his uniform's sleeves were covering up the bandages all over his arms, or else he would never hear the end of it. So far he hadn't seen head or tail of the Gremory girl or any other member of her little group. Just when the day had started to end, it looked like he was in the clear. And now all he wanted to do was take a quick nap. Poke. Naruto groaned and dug himself further into the desk. Poke. He scratched his scalp and went back to trying to sleep. Poke poke asterisk poke asterisk poke asterisk. The blonde man realized he wasn't going to be able to ignore this little pointy thing poking his head. So he slowly lifted his head up to see who was trying to get his attention. He was looking a small, almost doll-like little girl with fluffy white hair all around her delicate face. She was wearing their school uniform, but she didn't look old enough to be out of middle school. She had a little kitten hair clip on her bang and her solid yellow eyes were completely focused on the blonde she was staring at. She didn't even have a proper expression on her face. She was just staring at Naruto blankly. And to be honest, he was so caught off guard by this girl's sudden appearance that he was just staying silent for a moment. Oh my god! It's Kaneko-chan. She's so cool with it. WWW, what's our darling little angel doing here? And why is she talking to that brute? Maybe he's blackmailing her or something. He turned Kaneko-chan into his little errand girl. Ah! Bastard. Making her his gopher like that. I want her to be my gopher too. He didn't even do anything yet, and the accusations were already flying around. He blinked a few times and placed his head on his folded arms high. Hello? She responded in a quiet little voice. Who are you supposed to be? I am Kaneko Tuju. I am a first-year student here. She bowed her head towards the sitting blonde. It's a pleasure to meet you. Naruto bowed his head lightly in a return to her respectful gesture. What can I help you with? I'm here to show you to our clubhouse. Naruto was completely silent for a moment. He slowly blinked his eyes and rubbed the sand out of them. Wait, are you? I'm a part of Rias Gremribucho's group. Kaneko stayed silent for a moment before leaning in to whisper to him. She said to use that exact terminology to convince you. And that if you tried to trick me or run away at any point, I should sweep your legs and drag you there by your feet. Naruto had a lazy look on his face before he planted his head into the desk. He grumbled some muffled obscenities before standing up and grabbing his bag. All right. Show me the way. The odd sight of the tall blonde senior and the petite white-haired freshman was talked about by everyone in the halls. Words were said. Rumors were spread. And whispers were hushed. After a few minutes of following the short girl around, they finally left the main building and were heading towards the large building outside that he knew as the old school building. He looked down at the girl in front of him. Is this it? Hi. She looked over her shoulder. This is the base of the Occult Research Club. Naruto and Kaneko stepped into the main room of the building and were met with an extravagant interior design. The room was dimly lit, purposefully giving it an eerie look that went well with the concept of the occult. There were 2 couches opposite of each other with a small coffee table in between. And in the corner, a bath, and it was currently being used. A door off to the side creaked open and a beautiful ponytail-wearing woman walked in through it. She was holding a silver tray with a tea kettle and an assortment of sweets over it. She looked over to the two people who had just walked in and gave them a lovely smile. "Oh, hello Kaneko-chan. It wasn't too much trouble picking him up, right?" Kaneko shook her head. "No. It was fine, Akino-senpai. There wasn't any trouble at all." She took a seat on the couch and had an interested look at the snacks in front of her. She looked up to the senior student. "May I?" "Of course you can." She watched as the little girl started to delicately eat the chocolate sweets and smiled at her. She looked up to see the blonde man looking at her with a dry, unpleasant expression. "Hello Naruto Uzumaki-san. It's nice to see you again." "Akino Himejima. You're a part of this?" He sighed as he placed his bag to the side and sat on the empty couch. He looked up at the lovely woman. "We have a bunch of classes together, and it wasn't you that decided to drag me along? If it was me, you would probably do whatever you could to escape before I reached you." She tilted her head with a closed-eyed smile like that of an angel. "But if we sent someone adorable like Kaneko-chan, you wouldn't have been able to argue to her face. She's surprisingly convincing when she wants to be." The whiskered blonde looked over to the young girl that had barely spoken 20 words to him in one sentence, and just sighed. "Oh, Akino, I heard someone else. Did Kaneko come back with Naruto? Or did Yuto arrive with Issei?" The woman in the shower asked loudly over the sound of rushing water. "It's Kaneko-chan, Bucho. Did the plan work?" "Perfectly." Naruto just shook his head sadly and laid on the couch, hoping to catch some rest before whatever was going to happen started. "Yuhua! Kaneko-chan. The Academy's favorite Lolita first year. She's a part of the Devil Group too." An enthusiastic, very excited teenage voice yelled as someone entered through the clubroom door. The young man looked over to the other woman. "Ai Akino Himejima-san. The great Onisama of Ko Academy. The last woman to be able to pull off a ponytail in the 21st century. Yowahuth, so amazing. It's great. It's..." "Shut up." Issei was silenced when a heavy school bag beamed him directly in the nose. He fell on his butt and rolled around on the ground in pain. Naruto had stark white eye and a vein on his forehead in anger. "I'm trying to sleep here, but your yelling is pissing me off." Issei Hayato wiped the teardrop forming in his eyes from the stinging pain before he looked at his attacker. He pointed in disbelief. Naruto-senpai? What are you doing here?" Naruto shot up and stood on the couch. "I'm here because of a certain idiot I thought I could help, but instead I got killed because he wanted to get laid." Issei looked up with a righteous fury. Any man would waste his life to get a busted beauty like Yuma-chan in bed. "Don't waste my life for your useless reasons, you prick!" Naruto yelled angrily as he used all his willpower not to punch this brat into the ground. Although he had to hand it to him for having a sex drive rivaling that old pervert. Yuto Kiba, the Prince of Ko, gave his usual smile at the scene of their two newest members arguing so intently. He chuckled a little. "Well, our club hasn't been this exciting in a while now, huh?" Kaneko just absent-mindedly nodded her head in agreement as Akino placed a hand to her cheek and said, "Era. All right, boys, that's enough." The commotion in the room stopped as they all looked over towards the crimson-haired woman as she walked out in her school uniform. She flicked her hair and smiled at them. "It's time for a history lesson." Issei was walking down the sidewalk back to his house. The lively young pervert's mind was currently filtering and filing through all the strange events that had happened over the last few days. The first thing he thought should be noted was the fact he had died, and then immediately resurrected as a devil. Up next, he was now an official member of the Occult Research Club, which in his personal opinion was somehow a black hole for all of the hottest and most attractive people in school to flock to. Rias Gremory was the president in charge of the club. He got her permission to call her Bucho. Then there was the vice president, Akino Himejima. Akino-san was so pretty. And those sweater melons. And for regular members, there was Kaneko Tuju, Kaneko-chan. And Kiba. He really didn't care for that handsome bastard. But as it turns out, it wasn't just a hotspot for the hotties to come to. It was really just a clever little cover for their real group activities. As devils. Apparently Rias Gremory was actually a high-ranking devil, and every member of the ORC was a part of her group. And despite the menacing title of devil, all they really did so far was hand out pamphlets to people for wishes and talk in the old school building. Which was a real relief for him because he really didn't want to do the whole reaping souls, boiling flesh and drinking blood thing he saw in the movies and shows. Apparently, he had something inside his body called a sacred gear that was very valuable to her group. When Issei was asked to summon it, by way of shooting out a Kamehameha and totally embarrassing himself in front of his new club, his left arm glowed with an unnatural light and a bulky red gauntlet formed from his elbow down. He wasn't ashamed to say it looked totally badass. Also, the reason why he was attacked by the girl that he formerly knew as Yuma Amano was because she was part of an opposing group to the devils, a member of the fallen angels, and they had killed him because they were frightened that his sacred gear could be used against them. Bucho warned him to stay away from fallen angels by any means necessary. And right beside him in the inauguration to the ORC was Naruto Uzumaki-senpai. And he didn't seem at all surprised or intrigued by the entire concept of devils and the supernatural. In fact, that was the last time Issei had seen Naruto at the club. Or even at school in general. He didn't want to be a part of their group in the slightest. And even when Bucho was calling to him to stay, he said, "I'm grateful for what you've done for me, really. But I don't want to be a part of a war that doesn't involve me. I promise if I meet any more of those fallen angel guys I won't say anything about your club. See ya." And he walked out the front door. Bucho seemed a little miffed at that, but she shrugged her shoulders and just said she would figure a way to persuade him into their group later on. But Issei already found his persuasion. If he worked hard enough, gained some experience, and proved himself worthy, he could make a devil peerage of his own. And then he could finally realize his true dream. His own personal harem filled with beautiful, big-breasted women. So now he didn't care at all about blonde delinquent upperclassmen or fallen angels. All he cared about was passing out these flyers and getting closer to making his own harem. Issei was so giddy that he creepily chuckled while walking down the sidewalk. And while he was distracted with his perverted dreams. Kia! He looked over to see a girl in a simple green habit and veil covering her face had tripped over. She moaned, and she sat back up and rubbed her face. Issei blinked in surprise before he walked over to the young lady and offered his hand. "Are you all right?" "Huh." She looked up at the young man that asked her the question and saw that he was reaching down to help her. She smiled nervously and took his hand to stand back up. "Oh, thank you. I was." A strong wind passed by for a moment, and the girl's nun cap was blown off her head. Her long golden locks were free for the world to see, and her emerald eyes looked up at the man in front of her. Issei's eyes met with the beautiful foreigner's for what felt like hours. And all that came to mind was, "Wow. Oh. I so sorry about my fall. I don't know where I going." Am I?" the golden-haired young lady nervously sputtered in rough Japanese as she tried to apologize and thank the man that had helped her. She was probably speaking in a rough accent as she tried to use a language she had only recently started to learn. Thank goodness one of the perks to being a devil was the ability to understand other languages so easily. It's all right. You don't need to apologize," he reassured the young blonde girl. She perked up when she heard him talk and had a hopeful smile on her face. "Why, you speak Italian? Oh, that's wonderful. I was having such a hard time adjusting around here because I couldn't properly communicate with anyone." She grabbed his hands and looked up at him with a beautiful, kind smile. She nodded her head. "Thank you for helping me." Issei felt a blush run over his face when the beautiful stranger was showing her gratitude. He chuckled and scratched the back of his head. It was nothing, really. But still, thank you. You're the first person I've met since coming here that she stopped in the middle of her sentence and touched the top of her head. Her eyes widened and she yelped before covering her mouth in shock. Issei blinked in shock. "What's wrong?" My cap. It was blown off by the wind. I was so distracted that I didn't even notice." She got on her hands and knees and started to look around the sidewalk for any signs of her nun cap. She seemed worried. If I lose it, I would have failed the church and my duties." Issei heard the concern in her voice and felt bad if he just left. He looked around in the immediate area and saw the little white cap resting on top of a bush. He smiled and picked it out of the twigs. "Found it." The girl stood back up and saw the man she had just met holding her cap and wiping some leaves out of it. She had a huge smile and clapped her hands together. "Oh, thank you. I don't know what I would have done if I had lost it." It's no problem." He held it out for her as she took it from his hand. They looked to each other, and Issei felt a sense of ease settle between them. He smiled. "I'm Issei Hayato." The girl blinked and nodded her head. "My name is Asia Argento. It's very nice to meet you, Issei-san." "Ah, man." Naruto groaned as he looked at the third apron he had bought from his boss in the last few days. It was night time again and Naruto was taking his usual route through the park to get back home. He sighed. "I'm giving that old man all the money I've got already, now he's just taking it out of my reserves." He shrugged his shoulders and lost all signs of annoyance. "Oh well, as long as it goes to the same goal then whatever." "Naruto-senpai." Naruto froze in place as a small sense of dread started to build up inside him. He turned his neck so slowly and painfully that the clicks of his neck could actually be heard from the underclassmen. Issei was looking at him in surprise as he walked his bike over to the taller blonde. He questioned, "This is the second time I've met you here. Do you always take this route home?" Naruto grumbled and looked away from the younger man. "Yeah. It's a straight way home and it's the fastest to go through." "What of it? Why haven't you come back to the club yet? Are you really not grateful to Bucho for what she did for us?" "There's a difference between being grateful and running into a war you know nothing about." He looked back to the brunette and raised an eyebrow. "Have you found something to risk your life for like that since I left?" "Of course I have," Issei proclaimed loudly as manly tears streamed down his face, and he clenched his fist. "I will rank up in the devil world. I will gain followers of my own. And then, only then, can I fulfill my dream of having a harem of beauties by my side." Naruto just gave an unamused look at the man and blinked slowly. He walked over to Issei and patted his shoulder. "Congrats, kid. You are now in the running for biggest pervert I've ever met." He gave him a sagely nod and started to walk away again. "That's a very hard list to get into at such a young age. You have some great arrow skill." "Oh, thank you. Yeah, I try really hard and wait. Stop misdirecting me, damn it." He pointed at the slightly taller blonde with a burning passion in his eyes. "I won't just let you waste Bucho's gift like this." Naruto stopped walking away and stayed silent for a moment. He turned around and looked back at Issei. "Look, kid. I'm not a kid. Damn it, man, I told you I was only a year younger than you. I'm Issei, you bastard." Then Issei. "Kid. Pervert. Fuckface. Whatever. Don't call me fuckface." "Listen," Naruto exclaimed as he threw out his hand and stopped their argument before it started spinning out of control. He lowered his hand as his face took on a more serious visage. "Has it hit you yet?" Issei blinked in confusion and tilted his head like an innocent animal. He looked at Naruto. "Has what hit me?" "Well, you've probably thought about it a little." "About what?" Issei asked more directly as he was anxious to hear what the upperclassman had to say. "We died." Issei tried to hide the fear that threatened to show on his face as he gulped. A cold sweat ran down the back of his neck and he nervously laughed. "Why, yeah, we did. But we were brought back as devils. So it's all right." "You're a shitty liar," Naruto interrupted as he pointed at the boy's face. "You went all pale and you're sweating like a politician under oath. Even if we were brought back, that ain't something we can just throw off as a small inconvenience. Some people can walk off near-death experiences if they are strong enough, but dealing with real death and then coming back is a whole other matter. That's terrifying." Issei shook his head and gave a weak smile. "So what? People die every day. We were lucky enough to be brought back. And we came back from it. That doesn't mean we just forget it." He looked to Issei. "We all have our own ways of dealing with something like that, Issei. You can try to ignore it and work towards that harem dream for now, but you'll have to deal with it at some point. And trust me, the sooner the better." Issei took a moment to consider what the blonde man had said and felt a fear start forming in the back of his mind. As much as he wanted to say otherwise, he knew Naruto was right. Sometimes the memories of Yuma's smile and her soundless talking as the light faded out of his eyes started re-emerging in his mind. He was working in the club and doing all these requests as a chance to distract his thoughts. Because he felt like if he stopped for a moment, he would start spiraling. Naruto started to walk back home, but one last call from Issei stopped him. "Wait. How come you are so cool with all of this?" Naruto looked back to him and shrugged his shoulders. "Because I've already accepted it. Once before." Issei was left alone in the park as the weird blonde man walked away. He lowered his head in worry before his eyes momentarily looked off to the side where he was slain by Yuma. He shuddered a little before jumping back on his bike and riding towards his next destination. Rias leaned forward on her desk and looked down at her notes, while the teacher continued on with the lesson. She was pretty smart. She could afford to have her mind wander for a moment. She was far more concerned about the fact that last night, her new pawn had stumbled upon a psychopathic and extremely vulgar exorcist that appeared to be working for the fallen angels that had been appearing around town. Issei had nearly been killed by the insane priest and would have died if it wasn't for her and everyone else arriving in the nick of time to save him. And it appeared that Issei had become enamored by a strange young nun that was at the center of this conflict. In the midst of their faction battle, the blonde-haired girl was desperately reaching out to Issei and trying to heal him before he succumbed to his wounds. And that priest, Fried Selzen, didn't seem to appreciate her act of mercy, if his rough treatment and threat of raping her was anything to go off of. But before she was taken away, that Asia girl had done some basic treatment to Issei's wounds. A sacred gear that could heal fallen angels and devils? That meant she was an invaluable asset for anyone that could get their hands on her. But Issei seemed interested in her for a different reason. Something that made him plead to Rias to let him chase after them. But that was just a death wish she could not grant for the new pawn. Trying to recklessly instigate a raid against an experienced exorcist, and who knows how many fallen angels, was not something she approved. Speaking of reckless pawns, she still hadn't persuaded Naruto to join their club yet. They had been so busy integrating Issei into the group that they hadn't tried to coax the Whiskered Man in a few days. He hadn't shown up at school and Rias didn't know where he lived because it wasn't recorded anywhere. And she couldn't teleport to his location either because the evil piece she used for him didn't seem to respond to her seal. She just knew something was up with that pawn piece her brother gave to her. She just didn't think it was defective. Could evil pieces be defective? And if they could, it shouldn't have worked on Naruto in the first place if it didn't function properly, right? TCH. Stupid Oniai-sama. Achoo. Gesundheit, Surzek-sama. Well, whatever the circumstances, she had one dejected pawn and one runaway pawn. Rias just sighed and shook her head. At the moment, she kind of felt like her position as king of a peerage was teetering on the edge. Gremory-san seems kind of out of it, don't you think? I wonder what's on her mind. But you know, even when she looks worried, she's still so sexy. It's totally turning me on. Rias had a dry expression on when she heard her classmates whisper between themselves. And everyone wondered why she never showed interest in getting married. This was why she wasn't interested in having a romantic relationship with a man or woman. It was just too bothersome. Issei leaned against the park bench, his head hung back sullenly as he thought about his failure. He closed his eyes and the scene just kept playing back over and over in his head. Issei-san. Hearing Asia scream his name as she was taken away by that bastard priest while this useless pawn just fell to the floor. The fear in her face while tears spilled out of her eyes was burnt into head. He rubbed his face with his hands and groaned. He felt so worthless. Bucho told him that in the group of evil pieces, he was a pawn, the lowest of the low. And he believed that now more than ever. Issei couldn't properly explain why he was so sad about Asia. She was a sister. A former member of the clergy from the church. And she was now a part of the fallen angel faction, the group that had actually ended his life. And yet Issei just couldn't bring himself to hate her. But if he met her again, now that she knew he was a devil, would she hate him? Of course she would. Their factions had been at war for ages. She had probably been raised since she was just a child to hate their very existence. There was no point in him trying to save her from a group she trusted more than devils. Issei sighed and stood out of his seat. If he saw her again, it was probably going to be as enemies. That was their fate now. They couldn't change that. He was walking down the rocky path set in the park as he just needed to distract his mind from everything. A set of feet ruffled the pebbles behind him. Issei-san? The perverted teen's eyes widened in shock before he spun around to see who had called him. Standing there in the middle of the path, a surprised look on her face, was the golden-haired sister he was thinking about until just a moment ago. Issei prepared himself for whatever she had to say about his new life and the monstrosity he had become. Only to see a big smile and a small tear form in her eye at the sight of him. She cried happily, "Oh, thank goodness you are all right. I was so worried about you." Issei's eyes widened in shock again as she wiped the tears out of her eyes. She looked up at him. "I was so worried about your injury, and I thought you may have suffered worse from them. So I came out here too." Asia was interrupted when Issei almost tackled her and wrapped his arms around her small body. She was caught off guard and looked to the side of his face. "Issei-san?" Thank God. He ignored the spike of pain that ran through his head at saying God's name, and just tightened his hold on Asia's body. Small tears came out of his eyes as he tried to contain his joy at seeing her again. He sobbed, "I didn't think I would ever get to see again, Asia." Asia smiled and returned his hug. The two of them stood there silently in the park as they ignored the rules and expectations of their respective factions. The nun and the devil. And they couldn't be happier. "What are you doing here, Asia? Isn't it dangerous for you to be out with me?" Issei questioned as he walked alongside the kind-hearted nun down the shopping district. He didn't mind spending time with her again, but if it meant she might get hurt in some way, then he wanted to prevent that at all costs. Asia shook her head, "And no, it's quite all right, Issei-san. If I have to leave soon, then she had a sad look on her face for a moment, as she didn't want Issei to see her. "I want to spend it with someone I know." Issei stopped in the middle of his walk, letting Asia take a few steps forward until she noticed he was lagging. She turned around. Issei-san? Come on, Asia. Issei took her hand and started to lead her through the street. He looked back to her. We are going to have fun today. I know a bunch of fun places we can go to. Asia smiled up at him. Really? Yeah. We can go to the arcade. Or the movies. There are a bunch of places we can go shopping or grumble. Issei stopped and placed his hand on his stomach as it started to rumble out of hunger. He chuckled and felt embarrassed in front of the girl, as sorry about that. I haven't eaten today. Actually, Asia smiled and poked her fingers together. I haven't eaten either. Issei decided that the first thing on today's agenda was food. He looked around and tried to spot a suitable place to eat. Asia deserved the best kind of food. A high-class restaurant? Nope, couldn't afford it. Maybe. Issei stopped when he saw an open but small shop in comparison to the ones surrounding it. The first thing that caught his eye was the little mascot on top of it. A little bowl of ramen with limbs and black eyes. Issei felt like he had seen that somewhere before. Oh, that place looks good. Let's go, Issei-san. Asia started running towards the little ramen shop. Wait, Asia. Wouldn't you rather go somewhere nicer? But that little mascot is so cute. She squealed back before resuming her run towards the shop. He didn't know why, but he felt hesitant going into the restaurant. They walked through the front door. It was basically an empty shop. There were a set of tables spaced out around the whole store, but there weren't any customers to be seen. There was a counter at the back of the restaurant that anyone could come up to sit and watch as their meal was made. And then, a greeter popped out of the back room. Welcome to our little shop of dreams. A certain whiskered blonde greeted them with a smile on his face. He gestured for them to come in. How many are we seating to? Naruto instantly shut up when his eyes met with the stunned Issei's. The two men clammed up and were frozen in place as Asia looked around the empty store with starry eyes. Naruto senpai. Stop squeezing. Issei yelled in agony as Naruto's hand started to crush the teen's skull within his palm. Naruto had a cold expression as he completely ignored the blonde girl that walked around the little ramen shop. An old man walked out of the back and saw their empty shop with a few more people than he was used to. He asked, Naruto? What's happening? Naruto let go of Issei's face and looked back at the old man. Nothing. We've got 2 customers. Ah, that's good. Here, show them up to the counter. Got it. Naruto saluted before he dropped to his knees and looked at the brown-haired teen as he stopped screaming in pain. Naruto glared. You didn't come here to take me to your club, right? I didn't even know you were here, you psychopath. Issei snarled as he rubbed his face. Well then why are you here? I'm here with Asia. Asia? Naruto looked over his shoulder to see a young blonde girl sitting on the swivel chair and laughing as she spun around. Naruto looked at Issei in surprise. You're on a date? Really? What's wrong with that, you bastard? Nothing. Nothing. Naruto said as he motioned with his hands for the younger man to calm down. Naruto stood back up and started walking to the counter. Come on, don't leave your girlfriend behind. Issei wanted to argue that she wasn't his girlfriend, but the whiskered man was already gone. Issei sat beside Asia and looked over the menu. Issei ordered a miso ramen and Asia had the same because she couldn't read the menu. A minute later their orders were placed in front of them by the blonde waiter. You two enjoy that. I need to head to the back. Tell him when you're done. The old owner said as he headed into the back room again and left Naruto to wash the dishes. Asia looked at the bowl of noodles and soup. It smelled wonderful and she couldn't wait to dig in. But first, her prayer. She clasped her hands. Bless us our Lord, and these thy gift. Naruto and Issei instantly cringed and grasped their heads in pain as what felt like a spike had been lodged in their heads. They were writhing in pain as Asia continued her innocent prayer. She finished up and broke apart the chopsticks. Naruto pulled himself back up to his feet with a look of horror on his face. He looked to the other devil. What the hell was that? Issei struggled to get the migraine out of his head as he looked over to a confused Asia. That would be the effect that happens when we are close to someone praying or if we use God's name. Praying? Asia realized her mistake and looked between them in shock. She bowed her head. I am so sorry. That's a force of habit. I should have thought about your well-being instead. But I was always taught to pray before and after a meal to show my thanks to the Lord for blessing us with our meal. But it would be wrong to do it when I know it may hurt you. As still, I can't eat a meal without saying my thanks. Asia started to have a little existential crisis while Naruto just looked at her dryly in confusion. He looked over to the pervert who had already started to eat his ramen. Issei looked at him. She's a nun. A nun? Naruto looked between the mismatched couple and chuckled a little. A nun and a devil walk into a shop. Feels like a startup to a dirty joke. Issei furrowed his eyes at the older student as he laughed at their situation. Issei turned to the side. Asia? Asia looked up from where she was awkwardly holding a chopstick in both hands to try and pick up some noodles and looked at Issei. Yes? This is Naruto Uzumaki-senpai, a third year at my school and a recent addition to the devil peerage I'm a part of. Despite how much he protests. Issei then looked to Naruto. Naruto-senpai, Asia Argento. Asia and Naruto looked at each other before the younger blonde bowed her head. She looked at him hesitantly. Are you really a devil as well? Apparently. Naruto deadpanned as he looked the meek girl over. She seemed worried as he looked at her, but she didn't reach for a hidden weapon, and she didn't act like she was being kept as a hostage. Naruto scrunched his face in confusion. Shouldn't you be attacking us or something? Asia looked at him in shock and shook her head vigorously. And no. Of course I wouldn't. Why would you think that? Well, because aren't all these factions at war? Naruto droned out as he just focused on cleaning the bowls and other appliances. He looked over at Asia as Issei sent a little glare at him for making her uncomfortable. From what I've experienced, everyone on one side hates everyone else on the other sides and they won't even spare a moment before attacking. So shouldn't that mean you are supposed to keep away from us? Don't bother Asia like that, jerk. Issei responded heatedly as Naruto just gave him a flat stare. Until Issei blinked in realization and looked at Asia as well. Actually, Asia, I was kind of wondering the same thing. Shouldn't you hate people like us? Asia looked uncomfortable as she held the sides of the bowl. She tried to avoid their eyes. Well, it's true I was raised by the church to never forgive the members of the other factions. It's also the reason why I was excommunicated from my church as well. Asia's face told much about the pain and sadness she had experienced over the years. Her eyes became heavy and she looked like she was trying her hardest not to cry. I found a wounded devil near our church that was close to death. I couldn't leave him to perish, so I used my twilight healing to fix his wounds. But when the heads of our church had heard that my powers not only heal humans and angels, but devils and fallen angels as well, they branded me as a witch and cast me out. I should be angry. Issei was shocked and horrified when he heard Asia's tale. An uncontrollable anger grew in his chest as all he wanted to do at the moment was find those bastards in charge of the church and show them what a real demon was like. Naruto just shook his head. Hearing the anger and hatred people had for each other here made him sick. If this girl had learned to hate devils to their very core, he really wouldn't be surprised. But Asia had a small smile on her face. I can't bring myself to hate them. Or anyone. I know that may seem silly and naive, but I don't think we can ever solve anything like this war by just trying to kill each other. I think all life is precious. That's the lesson I felt was most important from everything I've learned from the Lord. And even though I was told the other factions were full of monsters that went against everything the Lord had to teach us, she looked at Issei with a warm smile as tears formed in her eyes. The way you treat me with such kindness gives me hope that we can resolve all this hatred without any more suffering. Issei could only look at Asia in surprise. Even after all the pain, suffering and injustices that had happened to her, she was still so pure-hearted. She was like an angel. A rough palm landed on her head and patted her hair. She looked up and saw Naruto giving her a small but wise smile. He laughed a little. That really might be a pretty naive way of thinking during a war. But if the world had more people like you in it, I'd bet there would be a lot less suffering in it. Asia had an embarrassed blush on her face from Naruto's kind words and Issei's smile. She just held her chopsticks like she did before and struggled to pick up some more noodles. Naruto took the chopsticks out of her hands and placed them in her left hand properly. He walked back to do his chores. Make sure you blow on them. They're really hot. Issei couldn't help but smile at what he saw. The senior that always walked away from him just couldn't leave an awkward girl like Asia by herself like that. He wasn't so bad after all. Issei and Asia were walking through the park again as the sun started to set. They had spent the entire afternoon together. They had watched movies, played at the arcade. Issei even won her a stuffed animal to keep. Asia hugged the little rat plushie a little closer to her chest as she looked around the park. She smiled at Issei. Thank you, Issei-san, for everything you've done today. Issei just chuckled. Don't mention it. No, really. This is the most fun I've had in my life. Asia hugged the little toy in her arms tighter as she committed the wonderful memories today in her head. I've never had any friends before. And I always wondered what it was like to play with someone like this. I'm glad I was able to at least once. It doesn't have to be just once. Asia looked over to Issei as he smiled at her. He walked over to her. I'm your friend, Asia. And I always will be. We can do this again for as long as you like. Because I want us to be friends forever. Asia looked up at him as he smiled down at her. And tears started coming down her face as her nose started to sniffle. Issei worried and panicked. What's wrong? Did I say something I wasn't supposed to? And no, it isn't that, Issei-san. I would love to be your friend and do this again. But she can't. Not after today. Issei and Asia looked up in shock as a figure stood on the top of the fountain. A woman with large black wings coming out of her back and covering them in a setting shadow. Yuma Amano. She was even wearing the same clothes as before. Issei's eyes shrunk in horror. Why Yuma-chan? Rainier-sama. Asia squeaked out as she hid behind Issei. Rainier sighed when she saw Issei's horror-stricken face. She looked down at him as she floated to the ground. Wasn't it enough that I killed you once before? Now you have to stand in my way again? She sighed and shook her head before looking him over. Oh wait, looks like you grew a set of horns since I last saw you, huh? Hee, naughty boy. Rainier looked past him and towards Asia. Come along, Asia. I won't be mad at you if you be a good girl from here on out. Asia isn't going anywhere with you, Issei proclaimed as his face was full of anger and fury for the black-haired fallen angel. She just gave him an unamused look. Shouldn't you know where this is heading? We've done this song and dance before. And that blonde boy won't be here this time to save you, Issei-kun. I don't need him. Issei waved his left hand out. Sacred gear. A brilliant light shined from his left arm before a large red gauntlet formed around it. He held it up, and the gem at the center of the hand glowed. Boost. Rainiers whistled. Wow. You really did have a sacred gear. I was right. Yeah. I've got one. And now Issei gripped his fists and prepared for battle. I'm gonna use it too. Shwick. Blood spewed out of Issei's mouth and coated his chin as he fell to his knees. He weakly lowered his head to see the spear of light that had pierced through his stomach. Just a few inches south of where he had been killed before. He really hated this fucking park. He fell to his side as the burning sensation faded with the light spear. Another pool of blood started to form around his fallen body. Asia's heart sank as she cried for him. Issei-san. Rainier walked forward and summoned another spear into her hand. She smiled this time. I'll make sure you stay dead. But before Rainier could bring her weapon down upon the defeated devil, Asia stood in front of him with a desperate look in her eyes. Rainier glared at her. Move. Please. You don't have to do this. He thinks he can take my toy and get away with it? I don't think so. Please just leave him alone. Rainier dispersed her weapon and harshly grabbed Asia's cheeks. She brought the girl's terrified face up to hers. You know, I don't actually need you in perfect condition. If I took off one of your arms or legs, it wouldn't matter. As long as you're still breathing, that's enough for me. Asia had tears in her eyes and struggled to stay brave. She looked up at the fallen angel. I won't run away. Oh? I won't try to run and fight anymore. You can take my sacred gear if you want. Just Asia couldn't contain her tears anymore as sadness filled her voice. Just please, don't hurt Issei-san anymore. Rainier considered it for a moment before letting go of Asia and nodding her head. All right, fine. I'll keep you to that. Asia nodded her head and turned to the boy before falling to her knees. She used her twilight healing to fix most of his wound before it became too severe. His skin started to reform and the blood loss started to weaken. Some color returned to Issei's face as he was barely even able to lift his head. Asia? I'm sorry, Issei-san. You got hurt because of me again. And I'm so sorry. But it's all right now. Now I won't get you hurt anymore. Asia placed the stuffed rat he had won for her in front of him and started to walk over to Rainier's side. She looked back at him with a grateful smile. Thank you for everything. Issei desperately tried to reach out for her but couldn't find the strength. Rainier grasped the girl's shoulder, and they disappeared in a shower of black feathers. Issei was left there in a pool of blood as tears rolled down his face and merged with the red beneath. He had failed to save her. Naruto yawned as he walked back home with his apron over his shoulder as the moon hung in the sky. His boss was happy that Issei and Asia were so pleased with their noodles that he had given Naruto the day off tomorrow. Naruto wasn't surprised. Their shop was small and unpopular, but it definitely made some of the best ramen he had ever had. He stopped in his tracks when he saw what stood in front of him. Stand under a tree was that pretty blonde-haired boy from the club the other day. Sitting on the edge of the fountain and playing with the water was Kaneko as she waited patiently for their target. And standing in the middle of the area with his arms folded was Issei with a stern look on his face. He looked at Naruto. I need your help. Nope. Wait. Issei tried to catch Naruto before he ran out of his reach. All semblance of seriousness and control he had a moment ago was gone as Issei gripped his arm tightly. He looked at the blonde senior. Don't just run like that immediately. Of course I'm gonna run. Whenever I see your face it's like bells ringing in my head. I hear them saying get the fuck away. Get the fuck away. Shit's about to hit the fan. I mean goddamn man. All four devils took a moment to grab their heads when a wave of pain ran through it. Issei recovered. Asia was taken by the fallen angels. The same one that killed us. Naruto just sighed. Why wasn't he surprised that bitch with the wings wasn't done screwing with him? I don't know what they're going to do, but they said something about using Asia's sacred gear. And I can guess that it isn't going to be for anything good. Naruto stood back up and rubbed his head. He looked between the three of them. And you plan to do what, exactly? Butcho said that she can't get involved with an affair like this without causing a big uproar. But she didn't say we couldn't do anything. Issei gripped his fist and gave a firm glare. We're gonna attack the fallen angels' base in the church. Alright then. Naruto finally got to his question. So why are you coming to me? We can use all the help we could get. Naruto looked at him suspiciously. What exactly do you think I can do in this fight? You are a pawn. The same as Hayate-kun. Kiba added into the conversation as he walked over to them. That means you can use the same base abilities that all pawns can use, promotion. That can help everyone in a fight. Kaneko added in softly as she walked over to them as well. She looked up at the blonde. It should keep you safe. I still haven't changed my mind, you know. I don't have any reason to be a part of this war. Sorry, but no. Naruto walked past the group of three and headed home. Asia gave herself up for me. Issei yelled as he tried everything he could to convince the older blonde for help. He looked down in shame. I know I have no right to ask you to risk your life for something like this. You only just met her today, and I haven't done anything remotely good enough to earn a favor from you in the short time we've talked. But she's gonna suffer if I can't do something. He looked at the blonde's back. Despite how you act, I know you're a good guy. If you saved the life of a worthless pervert like me, then please, help me save Asia. Because she damn well deserves it more than I do. You can do whatever you want afterwards. You can leave town. I can try to get Butcho to leave you alone. You can even take your revenge against me if that's what you want. Just help me now. What that girl deserves, a freedom she's never had, that's something worth fighting for. Issei was huffing slightly after yelling out at Naruto. He looked at the blonde's back and desperately pleaded, please. The pawn, rook, and knight looked at the back of the older pawn as he just stood there silently. He spoke up, you're really gonna charge the enemy base, fighting an unknown amount of enemies with strength like the bitch who killed us, and try to take that girl back before she gets hurt? He shook his head, you're an idiot. And you aren't going to stop until you do it. Even if everyone tells you it's impossible, you're still gonna charge in without thinking and just hope for the best. Just for the sake of girl. But just as Issei had started to lose hope, Naruto turned around with a smirk on his face. You know, that sounds like something to fight for. Really? Issei smiled as Kiba and Kaneko looked between each other in triumph. Naruto walked over to one of the trees and hung his apron over a branch. Like hell he was going to bring another one into a fight like this. I guess I'd feel pretty bad if I let an innocent girl like that get hurt without even doing anything if I could. So I'll help out. Just for her. And after this, you'll owe me forever. Got it, fuckface? Issei just nodded his head eagerly. Not even making a comment on the unnecessary nickname he had been given. He walked back over to the little group and cracked his neck. All right then. Let's raise some hell. The group of four devils were making their way to the abandoned church in town. It was silent as the tense atmosphere settled between all of them. They were all walking side by side as they made their way down the street. Kaneko, then Naruto, then Issei, and at the end was Kiba. They had been walking in silence since they had left the park and were coming closer and closer to the edge of town. Just past the front of the forest would be the old abandoned church. And for the oncoming devils, the temporary base of the fallen angel faction that had snuck into town. They continued on quietly. Okay, I know this is a bit weird to ask when we are already making the march there, but do we have a plan? Naruto asked as he looked between the group. I mean, are we gonna sneak in and ambush them? Or are we just gonna play this by ear? Issei thought for a minute before they all stopped and looked at him. He panicked and kneeled down while holding his head in shock. Shit. I was so ready to charge in that I didn't even think of a plan. He looked back up at all of them. I guess we'll just improvise and hope for the best. Ah man. Naruto sighed as he shook his head. We're screwed, aren't we? Probably. Kaneko replied immediately in a monotone voice. Actually, in all honesty, we most likely will be meeting some opposition in the way of saving Hayato-kun's nun friend. Kiba added as he started thinking, besides the main fallen angel in charge there might be some others that followed her along. As well as the exorcist we met the other night, and possibly others. Naruto nodded. Yeah, you might want to get ready with that whole multiple fallen angel idea. I met this the other night that tried to make a shish kebab out of me. He scowled while crossing his arms. Bet money there's gonna be more of them to jump us. Issei stood back up. Geez, you really know how people think while fighting, don't you, Naruto-senpai? I guess it was a lucky break to have the #1 delinquent of Koa Academy on our side, huh? You put way too much credit into a nickname some guys in school gave me. And you should really stop trying to summarize who I am just by the name. Issei gave him a light scowl. Well, sorry, but from my experience, the nicknames they pass around usually do a pretty good job. He pointed to himself. I mean, don't you think my nicknames as a depraved pervert suit me pretty well? Naruto shrugged his shoulder. I don't know. I usually don't waste even the most minimal amount of brain power thinking about you. Issei glared and was about to retort before Kiba raised his arm in the way. Excuse me for asking, Uzumaki-san, but something is bothering me. Kiba looked towards the older blonde. How did you come to be called a delinquent, and given such a bad reputation? I mean, you do not seem nearly as bad as everyone says you are. At most you are a bit snarky and have a rough personality. Issei scoffed. Rough is putting it lightly. Naruto's hand instantly shot out and karate chopped Issei in the throat. Kiba and Kaneko watched as the brown-haired pervert gagged and fell on his back as he gasped for air as Naruto cupped his chin. Well, it was all just a bunch of stuff that piled up after a while, but if I had to say what started it all, it would have to be an unfortunate meeting I had with Akino Himejima. The small group of students all looked at the blonde in surprise at what he said. He nodded. Yeah, it all started a little bit after I first transferred here. It was gym time and class was close to ending. It was still in the first week of Naruto's transferring to Koa Academy on a scholarship provided to him by the board of the school. It had quickly spread that there was a new kid who had moved here from parts unknown. And while some people had approached him for various reasons, no one had really gotten to know him yet. And of course, when you are not only a new kid but moved here from possibly a different country, what with the rather odd accent in his voice, you're susceptible to bullying from local jocks. Of course, they aren't always expecting someone to fight back. The door to the girls' locker room broke open as Naruto tackled one of the guys that tried to extort him. He tripped them up and planted them on their back before he stood back up to intercept the last man standing. The musclehead yelled as he tried to tackle Naruto with a judo move he had learnt in his club. But Naruto just used a bench as a stepping platform before jumping over his head and landing behind him. The large punk tried to catch him again, but just as he turned around he received a kick to the face before passing out. Naruto stood back up and wiped his forehead as he looked at the unconscious guys at his feet and the two others lying in the dirt outside. He chuckled. Maybe that will teach you guys to try a more subtle tactic than walking up to me and demanding money. Naruto took a moment to look around at the room he had fought his way into. Where the hell am I? Rah! Naruto was tackled into a locker by one of the guys he thought he had knocked out, and banged his face into the metal. Before the punk could go for a second strike, Naruto spun around and jabbed him in the face. Before grabbing his outstretched arm and slamming him into the locker, and grabbing his head and slamming it into the same locker he had just hit. The musclehead slid down the locker door before it slowly creaked open from the continued stress. Naruto hissed in pain as he gently touched his aching face. He looked down at the drops of blood on his fingers and realized he had gotten a bloody nose from slamming his face. He groaned. Damn it. Stupid pricks. Can this get any worse? Flop. Naruto looked down to see something had fallen out of the open locker. He tilted his head in confusion before he reached down and picked it up. He grabbed the straps with both hands and held it out to get a better look. It was a large black, frilly brasserie. And he was not kidding when he used the term large. If he was an immature little brat, he'd take the opportunity to put it on his head and run around making a fool out of himself. Or maybe go and see if he could carry 2 watermelons in the cups. Seriously, who in the school could possibly be this big? Naruto slowly lowered the bra out of his view and saw a beautiful woman about his age with black hair and a long ponytail. She had a sickeningly sweet smile that could ease the pain in any nervous soul, and she directed it solely at the blonde in front of her. The whiskered man looked around her and saw a dozen other girls at the door peeking around at them. And then Naruto somehow looked at their situation from a third-person view. The strange, foreign blonde exchange student standing in the middle of the girls' locker room after its door was broken down. He was surrounded by unconscious jocks. He had broken into the locker of Akino Himejima, and it appeared he had been holding and looking at her bra long enough to get a nosebleed. Naruto stared at the ponytailed beauty and looked down at her assets as they stressed the fabric of her gym clothes. He looked down at the bra in his hands before he held it out to her. Here. I believe this is yours. Akino just giggled lightly before she cracked her knuckles, which was then followed by each and every girl in her class that was standing outside of the room. Ayuyaya. After that, guys started trying to work me over for cash and girls sorta just stayed away from me. I mean, to be fair, I probably would have somehow screwed everything up anyway if I waited long enough, but breaking into the girls' locker room and raiding a bra had a strong hand in advancing that problem. The rest of the present Gremory group just stared at him with blank faces as they let his story sink in. Degenerate, Kaneko said with half-lidded eyes. Oh come on. I just told you my side of the story. Kiba chuckled. Well, I suppose that explains why Akino-san treated you so coldly when you were in the clubhouse. But I have to be honest, I've heard so many different stories and rumors about you that I can't believe that's how everything began. He looked over to the brunette. It's actually quite funny, don't you think, Hayata-kun? But he didn't get a reply as they saw Issei with his head lowered and his shoulders shaking. Kiba tried to touch his shoulder. Hayata. Why? Why did this bastard get to hold the casing for the biggest and most wanted pair of breasts in the school? I want to hold it too, Issei cried indignantly as he pointed at Naruto. He then realized what they were doing and tried to compose himself. Shit, no. Not now. Asia comes first. Must focus on saving Asia. He started repeating to himself, first Asia, then breasts. First Asia, then breasts. Naruto deadpanned, way to get your priorities straight, man. Kaneko followed, pervert. As Issei continued to psych himself up, Naruto let a small smile come over his face. He smiled and looked over to Issei. See, I told you your true character would start showing itself soon. Issei felt his concentration break and looked over to his blonde senior. He blinked in confusion. Huh? What do you mean? I mean trying to save that little nun girl even though it will be dangerous. Looks like you found something you actually can live for now, huh? He chuckled. I told you you'd get over that harem dream sooner or later. Hehehe. Issei laughed evilly as a part of his face was shadowed and his eyes took on a menacing look. No, Naruto-senpai, you've got it all wrong. You see. The harem plan has always been my dream. Ever since I was a little child getting his first chubby. The pervert proclaimed proudly as manly tears ran down his face. Once I have saved Asia, I will go right back to my plan of being the harem king. Okay. I take back what I just said. Kaneko sent Issei a small scowl. Super pervert. It doesn't matter what you call me. I proudly stand by what I am. So go ahead. Call me what you want. Kaneko continued, filthy bottom-feeding scum of the earth that should just crawl under a rock and die. Issei looked down at the little rook in pained shock. Oh, okay, that actually hurt my feelings a little. Oh, speaking of calling ourselves terrible names. Kiba looked over at Issei. Since we are walking into the unknown together, is it all right if I call you Issei-kun now? Issei just gave a small nod. Sure. I've got no problem with that. Great. Kiba sent him a beautiful smile, and you can call me Yuto in return. Issei returned the beautiful smile with one of his own. I'd rather get castrated than refer to you in a friendly manner. Naruto lazily raised his hand. I'll just stick to calling you fuckface. Issei glared at the blonde before he resorted to addressing the beautiful little angel in their group. He looked to the short white-haired girl and tried to appeal to her. Kaneko-chan, you can follow in your senpai's footsteps and start using my name if you like. She gave a small nod. You got it, fuckface senpai. Issei and Kiba looked at the freshman in horrified shock. Issei panicked. Kaneko-chan. What just came out of that little mouth of yours? Kiba gave her a fairly stern look. Kaneko-chan, you shouldn't be using language like that. It's unbecoming of a sweet girl like you. She felt a little sad at being told off and looked down. I'm sorry. Haha, don't blame her. Naruto added with a small smile as he patted her head. She only said that because I'm such a terrible influence on younger people. He looked down at her, right? She nodded her head as he looked at the other men. See? The pawn and knight just gave their senior a flat stare before they finally arrived at their destination. The small group looked at the abandoned, rundown church that was currently the base of operations for the fallen angel group. The group dropped their knees to hide better in the surrounding foliage and looked around for any sight of attackers. Issei furrowed his eyes and raised his arm. Sacred gear. His whole left forearm was covered by his red gauntlet as he made a fist. Okay. Let's go. Whoa. Hold on. Kiba grabbed his shoulder to stop him from charging in foolishly. He looked at the church tentatively. We need to think this through for a moment. He's right. There's no reason for us all to die just because you wanted to knock down the front door. Naruto added as he looked around. What about scouting the back? Unlikely. Kaneko looked up at him as she pulled a pair of kitten gloves over her hands. The fallen angels would probably plan for infiltration from behind. Okay, Naruto's eyes continued to roam before he looked at the roof. What about up there? Peek through the glass? Use the banisters as cover and a platform. Prepare the next plan of attack. Kiba thought for a minute. That might work. If we use our wings to fly up there and check. Issei looked down disappointedly. I still can't fly with my wings. Before Kiba could comfort Issei's insecurity, Naruto actually looked at each of them with genuine surprise. Wait. We have wings? Seriously? I thought that was just a gimmick she pulled to freak me out. And they actually work for flight? Kaneko nodded yes. Imagine you're a bat and you're spreading your wings. Naruto blinked for a moment before he closed his eyes and concentrated. Two black, crooked devil wings popped out of his lower back and spread out behind him. He looked back in surprise. Whoa! He focused for a moment and watched as they disappeared back into his body. He smiled. And then started to spread his wings out, then back and out, then back and out, then back and out. Kaneko grabbed his wing and shook her head. Not now. Issei just looked between all of them and yelled, Can we think of something? We're trying to save someone here, not play a stupid strategy game like Othello. Or Go. Or Yahtzee. All four devils felt the need to dive to safety as a blade of light slashed down the trees and bushes they were hiding behind. The figure holding the sword then pulled out a pistol and effortlessly aimed it at Naruto and Kaneko as they were crouched on the ground. Naruto felt his reflexes kick in and grabbed the little freshman before diving to the side out of harm's way. He rolled on the ground and kept Kaneko safe as the man stopped shooting. Oh man! I was getting tired of waiting for you guys. The white-haired priest cackled as he looked around at the devils surrounding him and grinned. I mean seriously. All of you, hiding in the bush, talking while you plan how to orchestrate the climax. Can you spell tease? Issei sent a venomous glare at the priest as he spat his name out, Freed Selzen. The stray exorcist spotted the brunette and quivered a little. Ugh, little devil-kun, so good to see you. But come on man, don't look at me like that, I don't know what I'll do with myself. Freed then looked around at the devils and counted them off. Weak little devil-kun, sexy handsome devil-san, adorable lil Miss Devil, and I don't know you. Naruto looked at this weirdo before looking at Kaneko. Who the hell is his freak? Pervert exorcist. Really dangerous. Issei stood back up and pointed at the psychopath. Where's Asia, you bastard? Freed beamed. Oh, you're here for Lil Asia-tan, huh? I can't blame you for being interested. He wheezed out in a sultry voice. When I last saw her inside, she was dressed in a flimsy little one-piece dress and getting chained to a cross like the Lord and Savior himself. Issei's eyes widened in shock as his teeth started to gnash at what he just said. Freed then seemed to hug himself. I so wanted to get some playtime in before they started the ritual, but Rainer-sama said she'd gut me like a chicken if I came close to her. That woman sure knows how to hit the masochist in me. But hey, maybe she'll let me cut up and play with the corpse when she's done. It's the least I deserve after everything I've done. Raraha! Issei roared as he charged forward with the intent of making the exorcist's face profoundly concave. Freed knew he shouldn't be fantasizing anymore as he aimed his gun right between the pawn's eyes. Get down! Kiba yelled as he swept Issei's legs out from under him and pulled out his sword to block the light bullets. With an experienced hand, Freed blocked Kiba's sword with his own and aimed behind his head at Naruto and Kaneko. Naruto pushed Kaneko out of the way as he dove to the side and started running away as the bullets riddled the path behind him. Freed laughed crazily as he watched the other blonde dive away from his bullets as he swung his sword to intercept the knight's. Ha ha ha. Come on, lil devils. At least try to stand your ground. I'm only at half-mast seeing you all squirm and run in terror. If you actually tried to fight back, I would be. Freed watched as Kiba jumped far away to give himself plenty of space as a large shadow started filling the area. Freed turned around to see an entire tree completely uprooted out of the ground and held overhead with him in its direct path. And standing at the base of it, the little white-haired girl that was pushed out of his sight was hoisting the thing up with her little arms. Freed gave a little nod. Actually, it probably would kind of look like that if it was at an angle. Kaneko brought the tree down and tried to crush Freed as he desperately dove to the side to preserve himself. He stumbled on his feet before aiming the barrel of his gun at the young girl's head. "You insufferable little GK." Freed fell flat on his face after Naruto made a quick slide and pulled his legs out from beneath him. Freed held his nose in pain and tried to glare at the blonde that pulled him down, but was met with a swift kick in the jaw by the whiskered man. Freed felt his gums bleed and grabbed his weapons to kill the blonde. "Usanuvo hshit." Freed saw the tree come down for him again and jumped away while still close to the ground. He rolled in the dirt and grass for a moment before he aimed up and shot at Kaneko as she ducked behind the tree. Freed pulled himself up on his feet as he was starting to regret fighting 4 devils at the same time. He looked to the side to see Kiba coming at him with a strange blade and blocked it with his light blade. He finally saw the opportunity and aimed his gun at Kiba's face. Bang! They all looked in worry as Kaneko watched Freed pull the trigger. "Yodo-senpai!" Bang! The light bullet left the barrel and came a centimeter away from piercing Kiba's face before it evaporated into dust and was sucked up over his head. "What?" Freed looked up to see Kiba's strange sword with an open top that revealed a black vortex that swallowed up the light bullet. He watched in disbelief as his light blade was broken down and reduced to nothing, leaving him with just a hilt. Freed was dumbfounded. What the? Holy eraser. My sword of darkness that swallows up all light. It comes in handy to have a sacred gear like Sword Birth that lets me create any kind of sword I want on a whim. Kiba smirked, and speaking of sacred gears. Kiba jumped back and out of the way to reveal to Freed the brown-haired pawn that was glaring at him. He yelled, "Promotion! Rook!" And as his body felt the surge of power that increased his physical capabilities, he held out his gauntlet, Sacred Gear. Boost! A fully charged Issei charged forward while Freed was frozen in place for a moment. He shrugged his shoulders. "Oh well. At least I'm going out with a ragin'." "Ha!" Issei planted his fist in Freed's face and felt a satisfying crunch from his shattered nose. The exorcist's body flew back and broke through a tree before he impacted against another one and dropped down to the ground limp. The little group of devils all came together as Naruto looked at Issei in surprise. He said, "That's the promotion thing you guys were talking about?" He nodded in surprise as he was feeling a little more optimistic about their chances. He looked down at the young freshman. "Nice job with the tree. It was fun seeing you play WACMO." Kaneko nodded. "Thank you for pushing me out of the way long enough for me to do that." "Don't mention it." Issei took a chance to breathe and calm down before he looked between them. "Now what?" Naruto didn't even wait before he started casually walking towards the front door of the church. The other devils called out, "Wait! What are you doing? What happened to sneaking in?" Naruto looked back at them and then gestured for them to turn around. They all glanced back to see the broken trees, burning bushes, bullet-riddled ground and generally destroyed landscape. They then realized that they couldn't have announced their presence any louder unless they did it on purpose. Naruto moved towards the door. "Let's go." The bulk of the Gremry peerage ignored the unsettling feeling they had walking into a church and looked around at its rundown interior. The benches and walls were damp and splintered, covered in dust from no visitors in who knows how long. There was mold building up in the corners and edges of the walls and a musty stench had settled into the atmosphere. Issei was completely underwhelmed by the sight. This is their base of operations. Geez, you'd think a group of fallen angels would choose a little more glamorous place to work out of. Kaneko added while she looked around, "We operate from a room in an abandoned school building." "Oh. Right." Kiba whistled, getting all of their attention, before he jerked his head towards a back door that led into a stairway towards the basement. He faced it. "I believe this might be what we are looking for." Issei ran up next to him. "Asia's down there?" "It would be our best bet." He looked around. That crazy exorcist said that they were holding a ceremony for her. And I can't see anywhere else that would give them ample space and time to do so. So now we're going down into the deep, dank, possibly dungeon-esque basement to stop some weird ceremony in a church. Naruto chided as he shook his head. Fuck. And here I am thinking devils were the weird ones. Not just the weird ones, the vile abominations that should be wiped out from existence. The group of devils looked up in surprise to see 3 figures with large black wings standing on the banisters overhead. One of them looked like a young girl, no older than Kaneko. She had light blonde hair and 2 short ponytails and she was dressed in gothic Lolita attire. The next person was an adult woman that appeared several years older than them. She was wearing a partially open trench coat that revealed ample cleavage and her long navy blue hair coming down her back. And finally, in the center, was a tall man in a trench coat with a fedora on his head. Also known as Danasik. Naruto lowly stated as he glared at the fallen angel that had attacked him several nights earlier. Warner, the tall woman, smiled smugly. We were genuinely surprised to see a ragtag group of devils beat up freed and march their way into our church. Middlet, the young girl, laughed haughtily. I find it funny they think they can do anything to stop us. Once Rainier finishes the ceremony, we'll be set for life and we can exterminate all these pathetic devils. Some more pathetic than others, Donasek added as his eyes landed on the familiar blonde in the crowd he still had unfinished business with. He grinned menacingly. Hello, baby devil, your arm's still aching? I don't know. Do you still stink like partially degraded wrappers and crap? Naruto replayed sharply as he wasn't in the mood to face this prick again. Issei brought his fists up. What do we do? You should go on ahead. What? I can't do that. Well, we've got 3 devils standing against 3 fallen angels and you need to save the girl from peril. Naruto looked back at him and gestured for him to move along. Don't keep her waiting. He's right, Issei-kun. It would be best for you to try and stop this ceremony before it begins. Kaneko pulled her gloves on tighter. Don't screw up. Issei looked between the 3 of them before he nodded his head and ran down the stairs. The fallen angels just laughed. Don't think that just because you send one inexperienced devil down there that anything is going to stop. Enough chat. I'm sick of looking at your smug faces. Naruto walked forward and raised his arms up the same way he saw Issei do earlier. He thought back at their explanations of the pawn's special ability and decided to test it out. He yelled, Promotion! Queen! It was silent in the main hall of the abandoned church as the fallen angels prepared for the pawn's increase in skill. Kaneko and Kiba got ready to fight with their own stances. It was silent and tense. Until Naruto looked back at his fellow devils. Okay, I don't feel any different. Kaneko and Kiba looked at him with wide eyes before looking at each other. Kiba took a step forward. Are you sure? Check again or something. I'm told you're supposed to feel a well of new power burning up inside you when you do that. Right. Well, I don't feel any different, Naruto said as he poked at his chest in an attempt to jumpstart it. He looked at them. Is there something wrong with it or? A spear of light was embedded closely near Naruto's foot before it exploded and sent the devils stumbling back. Donasek came flying down until he hovered a few feet over the ground and laughed. Looks like I was right. You barely even qualify as a devil. Ha! The Gremory family must have been scraping the very bottom of the barrel if they resorted to accepting you. Naruto pushed himself up on his hands and knees and shook his head as the dust settled. He said in a low tone, Figures I couldn't get a helping hand when I needed it. But you know what, that's fine. Naruto jumped up to his feet and pointed at the floating fallen angel in anger. I don't need any help from this devil shit. To kick your ass, you little chicken bitch. You won't be calling me bottom of the barrel when I'm clipping you wings. So come on. Donasek grinned menacingly as he started throwing more projectiles at Naruto as the whiskered blonde darted down the aisle of chairs and out the door. The fallen angel didn't waste a moment as he followed the senior co-student out of the church. Kiba was worried as he watched the blonde lead the man away. Uzumaki-san, wait. Kiba pulled out his sword and blocked a spear of light from skewering him sideways as the other 2 fallen angels laughed. Warner looked down. And where do you think you're going? Middlet held her weapon over her head before chucking it down. We're just getting started. Kiba and Kaneko jumped around as they dodged the spears of light that started hailing down on them like summer rain. Kiba used his blade to parry the spears from piercing them as Kaneko grabbed a bench and spun around before throwing it through a window. The Gremory, Knight, and Rook used the shattered window as an escape route into the forest. The fallen angels followed closely behind as the devils darted around the trees. Kiba and Kaneko ran besides each other as the trees and ground around them exploded into gravel and dirt. The 2 devils looked between each other and nodded before Kiba darted forward in a burst of speed. He left Kaneko behind before he circled around the trees and charged past her to attack the fallen angels. Kiba jumped up and swiped his sword at the smaller fallen angel before he crossed weapons with Warner. His blade and her spear sent sparks around them before he summoned another blade and blocked Middlet's spear as well. With his years of experienced swordplay, Kiba fought the 2 fallen angels off while they tried to pierce his body with light. The fallen angels clicked their tongues in anger as they realized they wouldn't be able to beat this impossibly fast swordsman in a challenge of blades. Kiba forced them back long enough for him to charge to the side and cut through a tree. He then bucked back and dove for another tree before running for another. He sliced through the base of 5 trees before they collapsed and converged on the spot the fallen angels were standing. The trees shook the ground as they all fell and Middlet and Warner floated over them. The little gothic girl coughed. ****** Was he trying to crush us? I don't know. Warner looked around to try and spot the quick-footed blonde but found nothing. She narrowed her eyes, damn it. Where did that measly little devil run off to? Middle looked around as well before something crossed her mind. She looked at her partner. Hey, speaking of devils running off, wasn't there another one we were chasing? Some little girl. Where did she? Here. The fallen angels looked up just in time to see the white-haired Rook over their head after jumping of an adjacent tree branch. She cupped her fist in her hand and brought it down in a hammer strike, knocking Calwarner into middle, and sending them both hurtling into the ground hard and fast enough to form a small crater. Middle was instantly knocked out from being smothered by Calwarner's larger and heavier body and taking the blunt of the harsh landing into the ground. Calwarner weakly pushed herself up on her elbows to try and stand up, but Kaneko landed beside her and punched her across the face. The short girl looked at the two fallen angels she had knocked unconscious and gave a small nod of accomplishment before she took off her gloves. She heard footsteps approach from behind and turned around to see her the blonde-haired knight sheathing his sword. Kiba smiled and walked up to the shorter girl. I'm glad you caught the gist of my plan. It was much easier knowing the muscle in our group had my back. Don't mention it. Kiba held up his hand with palm facing out as Kaneko caught on to what he wanted and high-fived him. Kiba laughed a little before looking back at the church. So, I wonder how everyone else is doing. Meanwhile, Issei was making his way into the basement of the church as quickly as he could as all lights started to fade the further down he went. He started using the wall for support in case he tripped while making his way down. The new pawn couldn't help but feel a pit grow in the center of his stomach as fear started taking root. What was going to happen when he reached the bottom of the stairs? What was all this crap about a ceremony, and what did it have to do with Asia? Were the rest of his team going to be okay? These thoughts raced through Issei's head over and over until he spotted a faint shimmering light at the end of the staircase. Issei walked into the room and his eyes widened in shock. On the opposite side of the room, there was a large cross placed against the wall with a beautiful young blonde girl in a short white dress hanging from it wrapped in chains. Between them was more than a dozen men in robes with their hands clasped together in prayer, and a light sword attached to their hips. And standing right beside the cross, looking up at it as Asia let out a pained moan, was the girl he once called his girlfriend, in the same clothes she wore on their first and last date together. Rainier, the fallen angel. Issei yelled Asia. Some of the priests went silent as Issei's yell reverberated through the room. Rainier blinked in surprise before looking at the back of the room as Asia noticed someone yell her name. She weakly lifted her head and saw the man standing at the end of the crowd, her eyes widening in shock as a warm sensation spread through her chest. A tear of joy trailed down her cheek as she smiled and whimpered, Issei-san. Rainier sighed, exasperated by Issei's arrival once again ruining the moment. She looked up at him lazily. Are you serious? Gee, how many times do I have to kill you before the lesson starts to stick? Issei looked to the black-haired beauty. Yumino, he glared at her. Rainier, let Asia go. Or else I'm going to take her from you by force. Rainier raised an eyebrow at his exclamation before she let out a small giggle. She looked at the devil. Whoa, you really fell head over heels for her, didn't you? Geez, Issei-kun, I might start feeling jealous if you keep hurting my feelings like this. She lowered her arms to her side and nodded. Okay, you can have her. A light started to shine from Asia's chest and illuminate the entire room. Rainier smiled. The ceremony is over anyway. Asia's body went rigid and she threw her head back as tears formed in her eyes. Asia! Issei yelled in panic as he heard his friend's desperate scream of agonizing pain. He charged forward in an attempt to get to Asia but had to jump back as a light sword swiped at his neck. Issei growled and activated his promotion to Queen. He felt a surge of power build up inside him before he dashed forward and punched a priest across the face. He dodged and smacked another priest away before several more filled their place. As Issei tried to fight his way forward, Asia's screams continued and became more dreadful with each passing second. Her back was arched in pain as a green light glowed against the skin of her chest. Issei tried to make his way towards his friend but was blocked off by several priests pushing him back. The little game of strength continued for a few moments until the light from Asia grew as bright as possible. And a beautiful green light floated out of Isa's chest. The room went silent as Asia's screams died out, and she was frozen for a moment. But then her back went slack and the light faded from her eyes as the green ball floated down into Rainier's open hands. She placed it against her chest and looked like she struggled for a moment before it disappeared and two green sparkles appeared on her ears. The fallen angel smiled at her success and gently touched her prize. She chuckled finally. We can win. Issei looked on in horror as Rainier disappeared in a flurry of black feathers and Asia's eyes slowly started to close. He felt something snap as he gritted his teeth until he tasted blood. A CIA. Meanwhile, Naruto dived forward and rolled against the ground before he started sprinting around the trees directly in front of the church. Danasik made quick pursuit and flew low to the ground as he threw spears at his blonde opponent as fast as he could. He laughed. What's wrong? Now that you know you can't even use your devil abilities, are you realizing how weak you truly are? He cackled. Because this feels like I'm hunting for fish in a barrel. Danasik created a large spear and tossed it at Naruto back before he quickly ran to the side and out of the fallen angel's sight. He raised an eyebrow and looked around, on his guard for the devil that escaped. The man with the fedora smiled. If you're trying to hide, it won't. Danasik was immediately knocked off his feet as Naruto came into his side with a flying sidekick. The fallen angel was rammed into the tree where he let out a pained groan and shook his head. He laughed. Is that the best you've? He was instantly struck in the face before grabbed by the collar and punched several times in the nose. Naruto grabbed Danasik's head and brought it down into his knee, shattering his nose and covering his pants in blood. He dug his fist into the fallen angel's gut, then kicked him in the shin, jabbed him in the side, elbowed him in the jaw and backfisted him in the eye. He then swept the man's knee out and barreled into his chest with his shoulder. Danasik was pushed against a tree before he coughed and spit up blood. He gasped for air as he was in complete disbelief that the blonde had done this much damage to him in so little time. He spit out some blood and glared up at the whiskered man as he marched forward. How did you do that? When we fought the other night, you were not this strong. Well, there are two reasons for that. One, Naruto held up his arms and looked between them. When I actually tried to fight you, I was a bit handicapped because I had metal lodged in my arms and I couldn't punch you hard enough. And two, every time one of you guys have tried to attack me, it's been by sneaking up, ambushing, or catching me off guard. But now that I'm actually fighting back. Danasik lunged at him with a spear in hand, but Naruto just leaned out of the way of its path. He then caught the fallen angel's arm and locked it up before he kicked his knee as hard as possible. The man hissed in pain before Naruto started to punch him all over the chest and finally in the face. The fallen angel fell back against the tree before he was pinned at the neck and his right arm was pinned with Naruto's left. Naruto tightened his grip around Danasik's throat and smirked. You know, for a fallen angel that's supposedly infinitely stronger than me, you really suck at hand-to-hand fighting. And that's coming from me. Danasik tried to claw at Naruto's eyes, but the blonde man just knocked his hand back with his shoulder and kept the furious man pinned. Now, you and I are just gonna wait here until the rest of my group show up. And after that, we'll figure out what to do with. Before Naruto could finish, Danasik's anger reached its boiling point, and he formed a small spear of light in his hand. He brought it up and pierced through the back of Naruto's shoulder, the small spear's tip poking out the other end and searing the flesh of the blonde devil. Ah! Naruto screamed in pain as he felt the agonizing burning sensation spread through his shoulder. He felt the strength in his arm fade as he lost his pin hold against Danasik. The fallen angel took this chance to try and cut Naruto across the throat, but with the blonde jumping backwards to a safe distance, all he got was a burning cut across his cheek. The fallen angel breathed heavily as Naruto grasped the burning wound on his shoulder. He looked down to see a small hole on the front of his shoulder, and a gaping hole big enough to fit several fingers on his back. Oh, and as blood continued to seep out of it, the effect of the light still lingered and he couldn't summon any strength to that arm. Shit. This Danasik growled, anger brimming his voice and blood dripping down his chin. His wings flapped violently as he started to ascend. This is an outrage. I will not stand for this injustice. No more games. This ends now. The fallen angel summoned dozens of spears of light over his head as Naruto looked up in shock. He started running for cover as he held his injured arm to keep it from getting worse. This is your end. Danasik sent the dozens of spears falling towards the earth as Naruto only kept ahead of them by mere inches. The ground, the earth, trees, bushes, and anything standing between the hail of light attacks and Naruto were reduced to scorched ash. Naruto dove behind a tree, but it did nothing to stop the attacks as the bark and wood were reduced to dust. Naruto leaned further down as he tried to hide long enough for the spears to stop falling. He closed his eyes and thought about what to do now. He couldn't fist fight anymore with such a glaring flaw in his defenses. And the fallen angel was too high up for him to reach while he kept throwing spears down. If he wasn't by himself, maybe there would still be a chance. Naruto's eyes widened before he looked down at his hands. He thought for a moment before he sighed. Didn't think I would ever have to use that again. Shit, this is so going to hurt. Danasik created a dozen more spears and kept them floating by his head as he looked around for the blonde. He stayed alert, ready at any moment to end that miserable devil's life in excruciating agony. Naruto finally popped out of his hiding place and started dashing for another set of trees to hide behind. Danasek spotted him as he ran and smirked as he raised his hands. "No, you don't." The spears of light flew through the sky and down at Naruto before one of them pierced his chest. And then another severed his leg beneath the knee. One burned through his arm and another took off a chunk of his head. All of the spears shredded through his body and destroyed the ground beneath him as dust rose up in the air. Danasek grinned. He was so happy knowing he had finally killed that annoying bastard. He waited as the dust cleared and prepared to claim whatever was left as a prize. But there was nothing. No blood. No flesh. No guts. No clothes. Nothing was left of the blonde the fallen angel was fighting. That was impossible. He watched as that devil was riddled with spears and reduced to the human equivalent of Swiss cheese. But now it was like the body just disappeared. Danasek looked around in an attempt to find something. "Hey!" Danasek heard that yell directed from behind and spun around in the air. He looked up to see the blonde devil, clutching his injured shoulder, and his black wings unfolded from his back. He had climbed to the top of the church and used his wings to help send him over the fallen angel. Naruto smirked as he looked down at Danasek's shocked face. "Hey! Remember when you said it was a courtesy to say your name? The name's Naruto Uzumaki." Naruto closed his wings and slammed both feet into Danasek's broken nose and beaten face. They fell 5 meters down into the ground before the back of Danasek's head broke their fall. Naruto stumbled off the beaten man and used a tree to catch his balance. He was catching his breath before he looked back at the defeated fallen angel. His nose was even more crooked than it was before, blood spilling down his nostrils and mouth. He had 2 dirt marks from where Naruto's feet planted themselves in his face and a swollen face. Naruto stood over him. "Hey, you dead?" "No repsance." Naruto sent a swift quick into his shoulder. "GK." Danasek gagged and coughed up some blood but stayed unconscious. Naruto just shrugged his shoulder before he hissed and resumed holding his injured one. He walked a few feet away before falling on his ass and grunting. He threw his head back. "This sucks. Okay, once we're done with everything tonight, I'm out." He started coming up with a plan. "Maybe I could drop out of school. I don't even know how I got that stupid scholarship in the first place." He looked up at the night sky. "I could try getting a second job. It would probably help me pay back my debt to Gramps faster. But I would actually need to learn about having better social skills. Now that seems like an impossible task." Naruto's ears perked up at the new voice and he turned around to see who it was. Walking up behind him was a certain crimson-haired king and her ponytailed queen, keeping her trademark smile. Naruto looked up at them with a dry glare. "Great. Thanks for showing up just as everything finished." Rias smiled. "Well, sorry for showing up late. Unlike the rest of you, I actually have to deal with the fallout of these actions." She then walked up beside him and got his attention. "I never would have believed they could convince you to join their mission. How exactly did they do that, huh?" Naruto narrowed his eyes and avoided Rias' eager gaze to know how to control him. He grumbled, "I sympathize with idiots. Plus I've met that nun girl before and I couldn't live with myself knowing I could do something to help but I didn't." Akino titled her head. "Aw, the Tin Man does have a heart. It's cold, withered, and possibly cracked, but it's still a heart." Naruto just sent a cold glare at the beautiful queen as Rias walked over to the fallen angel. She nodded in surprise. "I have to say, I'm surprised you beat a fallen angel all by yourself." She looked over to the blonde. "Did you use your promotion to win?" "No," Naruto said as he looked up at her questioningly. "That stupid power-up didn't even work. I tried to use it and nothing happened. Your stupid devil trick was a total fluke." Rias and Akino looked between each other in surprise before looking down at Naruto. "You couldn't use promotion?" "Didn't need it as it turns out." Naruto decided to stroke his own ego. "This stupid fedora bastard wasn't so tough." Akino smiled. "Says the man with the gaping hole in his shoulder." "Shut up." Naruto then threw a gesture over his shoulder. "There's this crazy-ass exorcist we knocked out over there too. You should make sure he doesn't escape or anything." "Where exactly?" Rias asked as she looked around. Naruto looked behind him to see the unconscious priest had woken up and escaped while they weren't looking. TCH, damn it. "Well, you still did a good job." Akino Rias looked to her best friend. "Do you mind fixing our new pawn up a little?" "Of course, Bucho," Akino said as she walked over to Naruto's side and dropped to her knees before holding her hands over the cut on his cheek. After a few moments, it started to close and fix itself. Naruto sat there while the woman fixed him before he saw Rias standing over Donasek. He asked, "What are you going to do now?" "Well, it's not unusual to kill one of our foes while they are unconscious or asleep." She looked over to the blonde and shrugged her shoulders. "But it leaves a bad taste in my mouth to kill someone who can't fight back. So we'll probably just capture him and interrogate him for information." Naruto thought that was fine. If the poor bastard was going to be forced into interrogation by a bunch of devils, that might be worse than anything he could possibly imagine. "Did this hurt?" Naruto looked over to see Akino start concentrating on his shoulder wound. He looked at her in confusion before he gave an indifferent grunt. "Yeah, but I've had worse. I can't even imagine how it must have felt to get stabbed like that." Naruto was a little confused about why she was striking up this conversation. From his memory, they never really had much communication or a public relationship to build on. At most, there might have still been a little animosity from the bra incident a year ago, and nothing else. He thought, well, that's a good thing. The pure, unrivaled pain coursing through your body and the blood-curdling scream you must have unleashed as you felt his attack pierce through your skin. Okay. That was just a weird thing to say as you healed someone's wound. Naruto looked over at Akino and was surprised to see the beauty with a deep blush and a heated look on her face. She looked up at him. "Yufufu, just thinking about the pain look on your face is making me excited. Era, I so wish I could continued form where you left off." Naruto had a horrified look on his face before he jumped up, interrupting his healing session and leaving with a slightly smaller wound on the back of his shoulder, and ran over to Rias for safety. He grabbed her arm. Please protect me. I think something's wrong with Akino Himejima. She's acting like she just wants to see me suffer like a fucking sadist." "What are you talking about? She's not acting like a sadist." Rias faced him with a leveled smile. "She is a sadist. The ultimate sadist, to be precise." She smiled pleasantly at the horrified blonde. "I thought I should at least let her have some fun while she fixed you up." Naruto stared at the shorter woman in horror before shaking his head. "You're a monster." "No. I'm a devil." Now she walked forward and placed her hands on her hips before looking at the blonde. "Where's the rest of my peerage?" Issei panted as he carried the unconscious, unresponsive blonde girl in his arms. He was beaten and a little bloody, but he had still come out of that crowd of priests with enough strength to carry Asia back upstairs. The pervert looked around and saw the scorched concrete and broken glass as he felt a sense of dread fill his belly with no sign of his friends. But he had to trust them. They were stronger than him. Issei stumbled over to one of the only benches that wasn't mostly destroyed and laid Asia down on it. He got down on his knees and nervously started to look her over to check if she was hurt anywhere. There were no physical wounds, but Asia's face was losing color, and her breathing was becoming sporadic. The green orb Rainier took out of her chest. It must have been her sacred gear, Twilight Healing. Issei didn't have any evidence, but when he saw that orb, it felt the same as when he used his sacred gear. And if that really was her sacred gear, Rainier had just ripped out Asia's life force, a piece of her soul. Asia submitted herself to such terrible pain and suffering just to save his miserable ass from getting killed. Issei swallowed the lump in his throat as he cupped Asia's cheek to try and get a response. He weakly muttered, "Asia?" The blonde nun heard the panicked voice call her name, and weakly opened her eyes halfway. She saw the devil with brown hair and felt a sense of warmth fill in the cold feeling in her chest. She smiled as her hand slowly touched the hand on her cheek. "Issei-san, I knew it. I thought it was just a dream, but you really came." Issei gave a weak chuckle before he took her hand and squeezed. "Of course I did. I would never leave you just become some fallen angel pierced through my stomach like rice paper." He grinned. "That's what friends are for." Asia looked up at him with a warm expression. "You really meant it, didn't you? I'm really your friend." "Of course you are, stupid. How couldn't I be friends with someone as great as you?" He squeezed her hand a little tighter and tried to get her attention off the cold sensation running through her body. "When I get you out of here, you and I can do a bunch of fun stuff together. There's some really funny and sweet movies I know you'd like. Oh, and we can go and eat together again. I know a place that has the best hamburgers and fries." Asia smiled. Could we go back to that place with the noodles we went today? I'd like to try that with you again." I'm sure Naruto-senpai would hate seeing my face again, and I kinda already owe him a favor for coming here, but I'm sure we could work something out." He chuckled a little before shaking his head. "But why in the world would you ever want to go to that dingy little place again?" "Because," Asia struggled for a moment before a tear ran down her face, "that's the first place I went with you when we became friends." Issei's heart sank when he heard her tone crack and lower as she struggled to keep her voice. He closed his eyes and tried to compose himself before he looked into the blonde's emerald eyes. "I swear to you, Asia, I'm going to get you out of here. And when I do, you can make as many friends as you possibly want. I know you will. Asia looked at his firm and honest expression and felt a sense of relief wash over her. She nodded her head. Thank you, Issei-san, but I don't think I'll need to. She smiled at him as 2 small tears came down her eyes. I'm happy knowing I was able to have someone like you as my first friend. Issei watched as Asia slowly closed her eyes and laid her head down. Her breathing slowly came to a stop and the strength returning Issei's grip faded until he was holding a limp hand. Issei's eyes widened and he just stared at the blonde silently. He squeezed her hand. Asia? Don't close your eyes. Please wake up. He didn't receive a response from the kind-hearted nun. Issei felt his eyes start to water as he struggled to keep himself stable. He leaned in and placed his forehead against hers as tears streamed down his face. He whimpered out, don't go. After he let out some soft sobs and realized that Asia really was gone, he grabbed her soft hands and placed them together over her chest. It wasn't a pleasant trip, but at least she looked like she was in peace now in death. And that's when it fully hit Issei about what had happened. Asia was gone. She was dead. She was an innocent, kind little girl that never thought about herself. She cared more for a dumb, perverted, weak little devil she had met while he was staring at her panties in a park than she did her own life. She was called a witch. A heretic. A traitor to the church just because she was born with a power she didn't ask for. And because the moment she followed the kindness in her heart and did something for herself, she was deemed an enemy of the Lord and his followers. She was thrown out, tossed aside, and abandoned by everyone she had ever known. No one would accept her. But that never stopped her from doing what she thought was right. She still prayed to God. She still helped those in need. And she never held a grudge, even against those that had abandoned her. But no one cared. They took advantage of her like that. And now, a girl who had a heart bigger than a saint was taken from this world because they didn't even need her anymore. Why? It is tragic, I must admit. Issei's ears perked up as he heard the familiar voice pierce the awful silence that had settled around him. A pair of large black wings flapped through the air as Rainier landed at the base of the altar, looking at the brown-haired devil as he kneeled by the deceased nun. Rainier looked around the church. She was just a poor little girl, abandoned by her church and home and forced to travel alone through the world. Blessed with a power that could heal any form of life she touched. Rainier activated her stolen sacred gear and touched the green lights forming over her ears. When I told her that all she needed to do was follow everything I said and she would be accepted by God once more, she didn't even argue. She was so desperate to be accepted by her so-called Lord and Savior. Rainier looked down at the nun and actually had a look of pity come across her face. I hope he has mercy on her. Or wherever she did end up. As a fallen angel, I could no longer grant her access to heaven. But maybe the Lord will show her compassion and accept her into his kingdom. Rainier looked at the slumped-over devil and started walking forward. Now, there's the matter of what to do with you, Issei-kun. This farce is over, and I've got what I want. But she formed a spear of light in hand and walked behind the shivering pervert. I don't think I would be able to sleep at night knowing I let you get away for a third time. Issei's shoulders were shaking as he heard her talk before he lowly hissed out, why? Rainier heard his question and thought he was asking why she took Asia's sacred gear in the first place. She decided to indulge him. I took her sacred gear because it was just what our side needed. This war was taking its toll and the injured were building up on all sides. Maybe, with Twilight healing, I can stop our bloodshed from getting any worse. For Azazel-sama, when he sees me save our brothers and sisters, he will. Issei's red gauntlet dug into her cheek and cut her off before sending her flying down the aisle. Rainier slammed against the base of the altar before she fell to her hands and knees gasping for air. Tears went down her face in pain as she felt her cheeks swell before Issei's hands clamped around her neck. Issei screamed with tears going down his face. Why? Why did you have to kill all of us? Me? Naruto-senpai? Asia? What did we do to deserve it? Why did we have to die? He watched Rainier desperately grab at his hands as she tried to gasp for air. He continued, It wasn't enough that you killed me? That you destroyed my life, but you had to take Asia too? For what? Why did she have to die for your cause? Tell me, damn it. Tell me. Rainier swiped at his face and left bloody scratches over him, causing Issei to let go of her neck and stumble back while holding his face and screaming. Rainier gasped for air and wheezed before standing up and rubbing her throat. Don't she kicked him in the stomach hard enough to cause him to throw up before beating him in the back of the head. You ever touched me, you filthy mongrel. I don't need a reason to hate you devils. She kicked the downed man in the stomach as he groaned in pain. She flicked her hair back, I'd been raised since I could flap my wings to do whatever I could to kill devils and angels. It's the effect of when your race has been in endless war for centuries at a time. She stood over the coughing pervert. I will do whatever I can for the benefit of my people. Then why us? Why me? Issei forced himself up and tripped Rainier's feet from under her. He then jumped her and pinned her shoulders to the ground as he looked directly into her startled eyes. When you asked if we could date, that was the happiest I had ever felt in my wild life. You were beautiful. You were kind. And even though I knew it would never last, I was happy at least knowing someone in the world believed in me. He then lifted her shoulders and slammed her head against the ground, causing her to gasp in pain. Issei continued, but you killed me. You took my life like it was nothing. Why did I have to die? Why did I have to suffer? Don't act like you know real suffering. Rainier responded as she punched him across the face and got him off of her. She pushed herself to her feet and stumbled a little before glaring at the devil. She stomped over to him and grabbed his hair as she started ferociously punching him in the face. You think just because you lost some girl that called you her friend that you could even begin to know pain? I've lost hundreds of friends and family to this war. I can't remember a day where I didn't see someone suffer and die from their wounds. And you. She punched him in the eye. You humans don't even know what's going on. Bruising his cheek, you all live your lives, warm in your beds, and ignorant of our suffering. She punched him in the jaw. If I could save my race, everyone I care about by sacrificing millions of humans, of course I would sacrifice all of you, let alone one feeble little girl. Rainier struck him one last time and looked at her handiwork. Issei's face was covered with blood, his eyes were swollen and his cheeks were cut from her brutal beating. She let go of his hair and let him fall on his face as she walked towards a bench to hold herself up. She cringed when she felt how painful her little wounds from the measly little devil felt and reprimanded herself on her failure. I don't care about any of that. Rainier's eyes widened as she looked back to see Issei struggle to push himself up again. Blood was dripping from his gums, but he forced himself up on his shaking legs. He mumbled, You may have suffered because of devils. And you may go as far as you want for your cause. Issei clenched his left fist as it started to shake, but I won't let you hurt innocent people anymore. Not like me. And not like Asia. His gauntlet cracked and broke apart, revealing a leaner, more stylish red gauntlet with a green crystal over his hand. Rainier stared at it in disbelief. Boosted gear? Boost. Issei glared up at her as his body was filled with power, and he ran forward. He pulled back his fist. This is for Asia. Rainier tried to protect herself, but Issei's fist dug into her face and sent her flying upwards. She impacted against a large cross mounted on the altar and broke it in half. She fell back down to the floor as the cross came crumbling apart over her. The dust settled and Issei stood there with an outstretched fist, beaten and bloody but victorious in his fight. And only his fight. Issei held himself up by placing a hand on the bench for support, and started gasping for air. He looked to the side and saw Asia's motionless body, still peaceful and unharmed even after his vicious fight. There was a rumbling and Issei looked over to see Rainier pull herself out of the debris from the broken cross. She struggled as she pulled her legs out but couldn't summon any strength to fly away to safety. Issei saw her and glared. So what are you going to do now? She wronged you, used you, and killed you. We would probably understand if you are holding a grudge. Issei turned his head to see Naruto, Rias, Akino, Kiba, and Kaneko all standing behind him as they looked at his tattered back. He knew they had probably already seen that Asia was gone and that this entire mission was a failure. But he still had something left to do. And it was currently trying to expand her fallen angel wings and escape. What are you talking about, Naruto-senpai? She killed you too, remember? Well, she killed me. Naruto looked over to the deceased blonde nun and had a tinge of sadness in his face before looking at his fellow pawn. It looks like she did a whole lot worse to you. Issei. Rias joined the conversation as she stepped forward and addressed the young pervert. You don't have to worry anymore. If you want, you can step back and I'll finish everything up. Her hand was engulfed by her destruction, and she said in a sad tone, I promise. Issei's shoulders slumped, and he thought about what to do. Until. Please, Issei-kun. The Occult Research Club looked over at the defeated fallen angel as she struggled to pull herself up to her knees. She cowered a little and tears formed in the corners of her eyes as she looked up at the devil whose life she had destroyed. I know you are better than this. Just let me go. Please, as show mercy. Issei's eyes widened as he felt something break in his mind. Mercy? Issei growled as if the very mention of the word was venom on his tongue. He turned and faced the fallen angel as he looked down on her with fire in his eyes. You want mercy? Did you ever show anyone mercy before you killed them? He gripped his chest where he still felt the burning sensation of her spear. Did you show mercy when you killed me and Naruto-senpai? Did you? Or what about Asia? I just. What about Asia? Issei yelled as hot tears streamed down his face, and he pointed to the deceased nun. Where was her mercy? She was the kindest, most caring person I've ever met. She didn't care if you were a Humna, angel, or devil. She believed everyone deserved to live because that was what she was taught. But she was the only one. Everyone else just used her and took advantage of her kindness. And she was nothing more than a tool to you, wasn't she? One of those humans you were willing to sacrifice for your cause. I am sorry. I'll kill you! Issei roared as he raised his gauntlet overhead. Issei waited Rias tired to intercept but was stopped when Naruto raised his arm in the way. She looked up to see Naruto completely focused on the crying pawn. Issei came up to Rainier as she cowered in fright at the vicious look in his eyes. He prepared to strike at her, and the raven-haired woman raised her hands in front of her to protect herself. As he was about to strike her down. Oh, thank you. I don't know what I would have done if I had lost it. Images of his time with Asia started to play out in his head. The way you treat me with such kindness gives me hope we can resolve all this hatred without any more suffering. This woman had killed the blonde nun. This woman had slain him without a single shred of remorse. So why? Why? I'm happy knowing I was able to have someone like you as my first friend. Why did he feel like taking revenge would be against everything the kind nun stood for? Reluctantly, Issei slowly lowered his gauntlet and felt his shoulders shake. Rainier saw this moment of hesitation and used her new twilight healing to heal herself. As she raised her hands to activate it, Issei's hands swooped down and grasped at the green lights on her ears. Rainier looked up in shock as Issei said, I'm not going to let you keep the last piece of her that is still alive. Issei pulled and Rainier started to scream in agony. She smacked his hands and tried to push him away as she cried, stop. Don't. I need them. Issei started to yell and he pulled harder and harder as Rainier screamed with tears coming down her face. Her wings spread out as far as possible and pain showed in her eyes. Ehahaha. Issei ripped the sacred gear out of her as a shockwave spread out through the entire church. It was silent for a moment as every member of the ORC looked at the scene in surprise. Kiba leaned over to Kaneko. Did he just physically rip out a sacred gear? Kaneko nodded yes. Rainier was silent with a stunned expression on her face, tears coming down from her eyes and a little drool out of the side of her mouth. Her wings started to dissipate into a storm of black feathers before her eyes rolled into the back of her head, and she fell over unconscious. Issei held the scared gear of his deceased friend close to his chest like a lifeline and sobbed, I hate you with every fiber of my being. And I want to kill you so badly. But that isn't what Asia would want. Issei looked down at Twilight Healing, so I'll keep her memory alive. If no one wanted her then I'll keep her with me now and forever. The club looked at the bloody pawn, as he had fallen into a deep state of depression. Naruto felt like Issei had finally accepted what had happened to him. He actually felt sorry for the poor pervert. Rias walked over to Issei's side and hugged him closely as he let out a few sobs. She rubbed his head to calm him down. Issei, do you truly believe that none would be happy if she was still alive? He controlled himself before he looked up at his king. Of course I do. I would never have let her get hurt again. If I was stronger, if I was better, I would have protected Asia with my life. He felt Bucho's hand grasp his shoulder, and she smiled at him proudly. Then she sounds like someone I can trust. While Issei looked at her in confusion, she grabbed his hand and led him over to the peaceful nun. She took out a red chess piece and showed it to him. If she is really so important to you, then I can't let someone like that leave before their time. Rias gently took Asia's sacred gear from Issei's hands and held it with her bishop piece. She placed them down on Asia's chest and closed her eyes before a large magic circle was created around them. Rias spoke an incantation and the entire church was flooded with red light. When the light died down, the evil piece and Twilight Healing were gone. Issei looked at Rias in shock before she smiled and motioned to the motionless nun. Issei kept his eyes on Asia. The blonde nun's eyes fluttered a little before she woke up staring at the ceiling. She blinked in surprise before she lifted herself up and looked at her hands. She muttered, What? I thought I was gone. She looked up and saw a horribly beaten Issei looking down at her. She gasped, Issei-san, what happened to you? You look terrible. Asia then blinked in surprise and looked at everyone that appeared around her before looking at the brown-haired devil. What happened? Asia. Issei yelled as he enveloped her in a big hug and almost smothered her. Naruto walked over to Ria's side and was gobsmacked at what he had just seen. He looked at her. Are you sure that was a good idea? I wouldn't use my last bishop piece if I didn't think she deserved it. A kind girl with a healing sacred gear that got most of my peerage, including a certain stubborn blonde, to come risk their lives to save her? She smirked. How couldn't I have someone like that on my side? Before they could celebrate a job well done, the club heard a groan and saw the fallen angel woman lift herself up while rubbing her head. Akino saw her. She's waking back up. I'll handle this, Kiba assured as he pulled out his blade and started walking over to her. This one has caused our family too much pain. I will not let her go. As Kiba approached, Rainier looked up at him and jumped back in fear. She screamed, Who are you? What are you doing? I'm going to put an end to you. For what you've done to Issei-kun and Argento-san. What do you mean? What did I do? You know what you do. You tried to kill them. You used them. I don't know what you're talking about. You're to wait, Rias said as she ordered her, knight, to halt the execution. Rias looked at the raven-haired woman as she gazed up at the pure-blooded devil in fear and confusion. Rias shook her head. Something's wrong. She's different from before. Kiba looked between the woman and his master. He asked, What do you mean, Bucho? She doesn't feel the same as she did before. I felt it when Issei took back the sacred gear. She looked to her, Queen, Akino, can you sense something different? Akino closed her eyes and tried to sense something with her magical power. But among all the signatures she felt in the room, Rainier's was the smallest and most fragile. Almost like it was broken. She looked back at Rias. You're right, Bucho. She isn't the same as before. Her magic power was destroyed. She doesn't even have as much compared to a normal human anymore. Issei asked, What does that mean? Issei, Rias said as she looked at her, Pawn, I think you completely destroyed the fallen angel Rainier, and now all that's left is this empty shell. Naruto looked back at her in confusion. What? What if she's just lying? Look at her. That's not an act anymore. That's real and honest confusion in her eyes. She's scared. Rias shook her head. I don't think she is a real fallen angel anymore. Kiba looked at Bucho. So what does that mean? Issei-kun turned her into a human? No, she's not human. But she's close. It's like Rias tired to explain the feeling she was getting from the frightened woman in front of her. It's like her wings were destroyed. What was left of Rainier the fallen angel is gone. Rias looked at them, like she'd been wiped clean of everything she was. A permanent case of amnesia. Is that possible? Kaneko asked. Rias thought it could be. There's never been a recorded circumstance like this. When humans have their sacred gears taken from them, they start to die. Angels, fallen angels, and devils have stronger bodies than humans, so if a sacred gear was forcefully taken from them like that, it might be the same as dying for them. Being reborn as something new. The group was silent as all that could be heard was the new human's whimpers of fear as she touched her injured body. Kiba had a dark look in his eyes. So what do we do with her now? What she did to Hayate-kun and Uzumaki-san still hasn't changed. Akino said with a stern look as electricity started crackling around her hand. I say we punish her for what she has done to them. Kaneko countered, but can we punish someone for a crime they can't remember committing? If she isn't a fallen angel anymore, would that mean we are killing someone who is innocent? It doesn't matter what we say. Naruto interrupted as he shook his head. It isn't our decision to make. The club members all looked towards Issei and Asia as they realized they were left with the decision of choosing the woman's fate. Issei looked up at Naruto for his opinion, but the blonde shook his head as he decided not to interject anymore. Issei thought for a moment before looking at Asia. Asia, what do you think we should do? Asia looked between everyone that was gazing at her before she spotted the frightened woman she was new as a fallen angel. Asia saw the fear in her eyes before she slowly stood up out of the bench. She walked over to her and watched as she cowered in fear. Asia raised her hands. It's okay, I'm not going to hurt you. Asia kneeled by her side and pointed towards herself. Do you remember who I am? The black-haired woman shook her head, and no. Asia swallowed and thought for a moment about a question she could ask. She thought of one and looked at her. What's the last thing you remember? She thought for a moment before realization dawned on her. I don't know. I can't remember anything? She held her head and started to panic. What happened to me? My head hurts and I don't know who I am. Who are you? What happened? You had an accident and you were hurt, Asia said as she placed a calming hand on her shoulder. A lot of people were hurt. But it's okay. We're all fine now. Asia looked at her. Can you remember your name? The black-haired woman thought for a moment before she shook her head. She whimpered no. Asia continued, your names are. The blonde nun saw the club members shake their heads and tell her not to call her that. Asia sputtered, your name is Yuma. They all looked over to Issei as he stood back up with a painful grunt before looking at the woman that had changed his life. He stared, your name is Yuma Amano. That's all we know. The woman looked between all of them before looking at the blonde nun. She looked down at her hands. Yuma Amano. It was the evening after the Gremry peerage raid on the church. Well, that puts an end to one of the most eventful weeks we've ever had, Rias said to her, Pawn, as she sipped on a cup of tea. She looked at Issei. Please don't make such a ruckus around the office anymore, okay? Yes, ma'am, Issei sheepishly said as he scratched the back of his head. He looked at her. Bucho, is everything settled now or? Well, as settled as an unauthorized mission to rescue a church nun from a group of Rouge fallen angels can be. Rias lowered her cup and looked at him sternly. We didn't catch the priest. All of the other fallen angels escaped while we were healing you. And Rias pouted while looking off to the side. I still haven't gotten Naruto to come around to our side yet. Issei sent out a weak chuckle when he remembered what had happened after all the commotion at the church. Rias confronted Naruto and said that while she healed the injury on his shoulder, they were going to have a nice long talk about what he was going to do about the club. His response. Shit! Fallen angels! And while the rest of the team looked where he pointed, he dashed out of the church and ran as fast as he could. Bucho was not happy about that. Rias placed her tea on the table, and finally, on the matter of Ms. Yuma Amano, Rias looked at her. Pawn, we've done some checking on her and come to a result. She doesn't have her wings anymore and her memories and experiences have been completely destroyed. Turns out you ripping a sacred gear out of her did some pretty severe damage to her system. Alright. Rias took out a photo and handed it to Issei. He saw the picture of a smiling Yuma, standing at a train stop with a suitcase and a bandage of her cheek. Rias continued, we sent her to another school in a different town where we have some connections. We will keep an eye on her to make sure nothing goes wrong, but I think that everything is settled now. The fallen angel Rainier is gone and the woman Yuma Amano has been given a new chance at life. Issei looked at the photo for a little longer before he nodded. He still didn't know what to think about this situation, but it was no longer his concern. He placed the photo on the table. That's good. I'm proud of you, Issei. He heard Rias say with pride on her voice, you've come so far in just a week. I hope you can find some peace with this. Thank you, Bucho, Issei said as he stood out of his spot and was ready to leave the building and go home. Before he looked back at her, Bucho, can I ask you one last thing? What about Asia? What's going to happen to her? Oh well, Rias smiled at her. Pawn, why don't you see for yourself? Issei looked at her in confusion before the main door opened and Akino and Kaneko emerged with Asia dressed up in their school uniform. She fiddled with the skirt a little before she saw her friend staring at her. She gave a nervous smile and blushed. Hello, Issei-san, I'm your newest club member. I hope you treat me very well. Issei blinked in surprise. Asia? Yes. Rias Bucho-san invited me to come to your school and study here. She said it was what every normal girl should do at my age. She looked up at him. How do I look? Issei was speechless as he answered, wow. Oh, they're so cute. Kiba teased as he walked into the club. Era, I think I see hearts flying around them. Akino added with a hand on her cheek. Babies, Kaneko stated flatly. Issei and Asia blushed in embarrassment at their group teasing as Rias stood up. Now, that's enough, everyone. Now, we need to celebrate Asia's new place in our family. But first, Issei, I need to ask you something. The perverted pawn looked at her. What is it, Bucho? Rias looked at him and smirked. How exactly did you find Naruto? Issei saw the look on her face and could already imagine the whiskered man beating the shit out of him when he sold him out. Issei gulped. Shit. 10,000 yen for the knife. You can't be serious. The pawn shop owner looked into the blonde's eyes and glared. Do I look like I'm kidding? I don't know. I walked into your store and you said welcome, good sir. How can I help you? And even when you said that, you still look like you were going to take the first chance you could to shoot me in the face, Naruto said as he matched the older man's glare. The shop owner sighed. Look, kid, I've told you already. He picked up a large knife with a yellow guard and showed it to Naruto. This knife is 10,000 yen and I'm not changing the ticket price. If you can't afford this, then look at the other knives I've got. And I already told you, Naruto held up some money. This is the most I can spend without screwing myself over until I get paid. I would try to get some more to spend, but I'm usually one bad purchase away from living in the alley. Then maybe you can try buying one of the cheaper knives. I will if you can scrap off just a little from the tag. Okay, kid. The owner sighed exhaustedly as he shook his head. Why do you even need a knife anyway? You're like what, 15 years old? 18. Naruto replied pointedly, a little offended that the man would think he looked like a kid. He was even a little taller than the owner, for Pete's sake. He was starting to shave. Okay, so why does an 18-year-old brat want a knife to begin with? Because Naruto looked at the man. Over the last few days I've been getting into some rather unavoidable situations. Naruto had a bit of a scowl on his face, and honestly, I'm pretty sure a knife can help me get on top of them. Plus, I don't know how to use a gun, and I'm pretty sure swords are banned in this country. The shop owner pulled over a simple knife with no guard and a black grip. This is the cheapest knife I've got while still being sturdy enough to use. And it's 5,000 yen. But in the interest of getting you out of my store at 8:30 in the goddamn morning, I'll cut it down to 4,000 yen. How's that? Naruto looked at the simple knife for a moment before asking again, no lower? No lower. Deal. Naruto shook the owner's hand before handing him the bulk of his cash and taking the knife along with a small sheath. The man started counting through his cash as the blonde student placed the knife and its sheath together in his bag. He warned him, now make sure you don't poke anyone's eye out with that thing. And never hold the sharp end towards you. And I know how to use a knife, damn it. I've been practicing with them since I was a kid. The man looked at him in surprise before he shook his head. Now that's just worrying. Naruto walked out of the pawn shop and made his way to the ramen shop for work. After spending his entire day off resting in bed and trying to fix up what was left of his right shoulder, Naruto was feeling a little cheated. But he was at least going to enjoy the peace and quiet at his job. Of course, he was going to have to pay for another apron again. When he came back the next morning to the tree to pick up his apron, the damn thing was gone. Who the fuck steals a ramen apron hanging from a tree in the middle of a park? He turned the corner and saw the ramen shop he was employed at as the front door slid open. His boss, Miyamoto, an older middle-aged man, walked out laughing and started raising the flag to signal they were open for business. Naruto waved, hey Gramps, what you laughing at? Finally starting to go senile? The ramen owner looked at his sole employee and smiled, hey, Naruto Emboy, about time you got here. We were just talking about you. Naruto chuckled, yeah. He froze for a moment before he looked at his boss waringly, wait. What do you mean we? The door opened again and a second figure walked out behind Miyamoto. A caviar, girlier, school uniform wearing, school bag carrying, long crimson-haired figure to be exact. Rias poked her head out from behind the door with a smile and waved, Yuvu. We've been waiting. Naruto instantly turned to stone and broke apart as his second-to-last sanctuary was taken from him. He pointed at her like he had seen a ghost. Why are you? I had a little extra time after I finished up some business, and Issei told me about this lovely little ramen shop he went to the other day. Rias kept playing the innocent girl and blushed embarrassingly. I should have realized that a restaurant wouldn't be open at such an early time, but I couldn't stop myself from coming. She smiled up at the shop owner, and when Miyamoto-san saw me standing outside, he invited me in for some tea. Naruto felt a vain throb in his head. This woman had some serious guts to be playing the ditzy damsel so well in front of him. Oh, and fuckface was dead when he got his hands on him. Miyamoto scratched his head and laughed. Well, when a pretty lady such as this actually comes to my crummy little shop, I can't just say no. I mean, I think I've only seen hair as beautiful as this once before in my whole life. He then looked at Naruto with pride in his eyes, and congratulations, Naruto. Rias-san tells me you joined her club at school. That's great. I didn't even know you could make friends. Naruto glared, I didn't. Sign the papers just yet. Rias interrupted him, but he's already been accepted by everyone in the club and we just can't wait to have him in. Rias then started acting like she was sad, but he just hasn't even bothered to show up to class anymore for the last few days. I was so worried that I came to check on him myself. Shame on you, Naruto. Making such a lovely lady like this worry. He looked towards Rias and tried to console her. I'm terribly sorry for his behavior, but it is partially my fault as well. You see, he told me that he didn't need to concern himself with an education and threw himself into working here at the shop. But if I had known it was causing this much strife, I would have told him to go more often. It's all right. It's almost time for Golden Week anyway. Rias smiled. He should just start making up for it now by coming to school today. Naruto looked at her with a slack jaw and shook his head. He argued, hey, it's my choice. And I decided to get some work in today. But look, Rias pointed at the school bag he carried his wallet, supplies, and a recently purchased knife in. He looked up at Miyamoto. I think that's all he needs to go to school, don't you think? Why, yes. I totally agree. Naruto sneered before he took a calming breath and walked up to his boss. He looked the man in the eyes. Gramps, listen, I hate school. The subjects are boring. The days are long. I don't learn anything because I couldn't keep my focus on a can of beans long enough to save my life. It's just always been a rather agonizing experience for me. He grabbed the man's shoulder. Wouldn't you rather have me work here so we can get some quick cash and serve up some good ramen? Huh? What did you say? Miyamoto smiled and grasped Naruto's shoulder. Naruto. I hated school too. Stop bitching and get over it. Miyamoto walked into the ramen shop and closed it behind him as he left the frozen blonde outside. Rias giggled a little at his complete motionless form before she watched him sigh. He looked back at her with a dry glare. You are enjoying this way too much. Hee hee. Rias said with a giggle before she spun on her feet and started walking towards the direction of their school. Well, come on. No use in wasting our time anymore. Naruto grumbled before he started walking behind the cheerful devil. He looked at her strangely. You know, I'm sure classes have already started. I'm fine with being tardy, but what about you? Oh, it's just one day. Rias reassured as she kept walking through the streets. I might get scolded by an old friend of mine, but that's a chance I'm willing to take. Naruto shrugged his shoulders and decided he wasn't going to bother talking her out of it. He had only known her for a little over a week, and she had already cemented herself as one of the most stubborn women he had ever met. He thought for a moment before he looked at her back. Hey, what do I call you? She looked back at him. What do you mean? Well, everyone in your club likes to call you Bucho. And I don't really know what I should call you either. Like Bucho, or Rias Gremory, or Gremory-san, or Rias. You can just call me Rias. The beautiful crimson-haired woman smiled back at him. If you let me call you Naruto, then I feel it would only be fair if that goes both ways. The blonde looked at her, smile at him, and felt it would only be a step backwards if he refused. He nodded. All right, Rias. Let's go to school. Hello everyone. It's a pleasure to meet you, the blonde girl nervously said as she stood at the front of the class. She bowed her head. My name is Asia Argento, and I'll be transferring into your class today. I hope you all can watch over me while I'm here. The moment the new transfer student finished her introduction, everyone in class jumped out of their seats and roared like animals. It wasn't every day they got a super adorable little blonde foreigner transferred into their class. As everyone flocked around her, Asia was panicking and didn't know what to do. She was not used to having everyone pay attention to her. One bald student raised his head as the light reflected off his scalp. His eyes narrowed in a serious manner. A flag has risen on our pathetic little class. Among all this coal, a shining diamond has finally appeared. His friend, a young man with glasses, adjusted his spectacles as they started to shine. He shared the serious tone. B78W55H 81 centimeter long flowing blonde. Small but sturdy frame. Nervous but overall kind demeanor. Yes. The two perverts jumped out of their seats and posed in unison as they screamed. The beautiful transfer student event has finally arrived. X2. Issei watched with his hand under his chin as everyone flocked around his friend. He had a fond smile on his face as he watched Asia fumble with her words and try to answer all of their questions as fast as she could. She may have looked embarrassed and flushed, but she must have been so happy that she could talk to so many new people and make friends. He's got that look on his face again, Matsuda whispered to his friend as they stared at Issei. Yep. He's already getting perverted thoughts about what he wants to do with her, Motohama said as he adjusted his glasses. They then both gave him a thumbs up. That's our Issei. Issei was brought out of his thoughts as he saw his friends surround him. What? No. I was. Ugh. They're already raring to go. Freaks. One female student said as she looked at the pervert trio with scorn in her voice. They can't try to control it for a single day, can they? You need to stay away from those guys, Argento-san, one of the girls said to the new blonde as a warning. She looked back at them like they were vile. You don't want to catch any, Argento-san? But the whole class saw that Asia had disappeared from their little wall of protection from the lustful group as she happily walked over to them. She didn't notice Motohama and Matsuda's complete look of disbelief before she stopped and smiled. I tried my hardest and I was able to speak in front of everyone. Do you think I did well? Issei smiled reassuringly and nodded his head. Yeah. You were fantastic, Asia. Asia beamed a great big smile and jumped in happiness. Oh, thank you, Issei-san. The class yelled in disbelief. She's talking to Hayada. Why the hell is Argento-san associating with that perv? Motohama and Matsuda slammed their hands on the desk as they glared at Issei. Issei. What the hell? How does a smokin' hot blonde transfer student know your name? You hidin' something from us, you bastard. Don't even try to lie because I'll know. Issei leaned back as he was cautious of their uneasy stares before he answered, well, Asia's my friend. Way audit? The entire class yelled in even greater disbelief. She can't be your friend. Girls aren't friends with us. Especially you, the most depraved and horniest of the bunch. Issei glared and yelled at his friends, hey, I can have friends too, you bastards. That's right. Asia walked forward and stood by Issei's desk while placing a hand to her chest. Issei-san is my dearest and closest friend. Honest. Issei felt touched by her honest feelings about their friendship as everyone stared at them in utter shock. One girl stuttered, but that's impossible, isn't it? Why would you think that? Because he's a pervert. That doesn't mean that Issei-san isn't a good person, Asia said with a red face as she defended her new friend. He's kind, and he's always watching out for me. He wants me to make as many friends as possible, and he was nice enough to let me live in his house. Everyone in class was gobsmacked by that declaration before they mechanically turned their heads to look at the brown-haired pervert. Issei sighed and shook his head. Damn. He thought Asia was adorable and was happy to help her in any way, but she was a bit of an airhead when it came down to it. Naruto had a glum look on his face as he eyed the clock's slow tick away to their lunch break.